The first moving truck arrived at 7:12 on Saturday morning, before Evelyn Mercer had put water in the coffee maker. Its brakes sighed outside her bedroom window. A second truck turned in behind it, flattening the damp newspapers she had not yet collected from the driveway. Evelyn stood at the window in Walter's old robe and watched her eldest daughter climb out of a gray SUV, carrying 3 rolls of packing tape. Diane looked up, saw her, and waved. Not a guilty wave. A cheerful, competent wave, the kind she gave before entering a restaurant where she had already corrected the reservation. Scott's pickup was parked at the curb. Melissa was unloading empty boxes from her hatchback. 2 uniformed movers opened the back of the first truck, while another man pulled a dolly down a metal ramp. Evelyn lifted the window. "What are you doing?" Diane cupped both hands around her mouth. "Go make your coffee, Mom. We brought breakfast." Scott came out of the garage carrying Walter's red tool chest. For one strange second, that was the only thing Evelyn saw. Not the trucks or the boxes or her 3 adult children moving briskly through her morning, just Scott's hand around the steel handle Walter had wrapped in black electrical tape because the original grip had cracked. "Put that down," she called. Scott glanced up. "It's okay, Mom." That answer frightened her more than if he had told her no. 4 nights earlier, the 5 of them had been sitting around Evelyn's dining table, though there were only 4 people left to sit there. Walter's chair remained at the head, pushed in farther than the others. Evelyn had tried moving it to the basement after the funeral, but she made it halfway across the kitchen before stopping. It was just a chair, oak with a curved back and a pale scrape on one leg. Walter had caused the scrape by tilting backward during an argument about whether they could afford central air in 1998. They could not. They installed it anyway. Now the chair stayed tucked beneath the table, as if Walter had stepped outside to check the mail. Evelyn had made pot roast because Diane disliked casseroles. Scott claimed chicken did not count as dinner, and Melissa had recently announced that red meat made her feel sluggish. Pot roast was not a solution to those preferences, but it was what Evelyn had defrosted. Melissa ate 2 helpings. "This is good," she said, dragging a carrot through gravy. "You say that like you were expecting upholstery. I always say your food is good. You usually say, 'This is actually good.' There's a difference." Scott laughed into his napkin. Diane did not. Diane had been looking at the brown crescent on the dining room ceiling. "How long has that been there?" she asked. Evelyn did not look up. "What? The stain?" "What stain?" "Mom." There were many things Evelyn disliked about getting older. Her knees predicted rain, but offered no useful information about what time it would arrive. Printed instructions had grown smaller through what she considered a conspiracy. Young pharmacists called her sweetheart. But nothing irritated her quite like the way her children now said Mom when they meant objection overruled. "It's from the porch roof," Evelyn said. "Noah is coming Thursday." Scott lowered his fork. "Noah Price?" "Yes." "You called Noah?" "He's a carpenter, and I have something made of wood that needs attention." It seemed a natural pairing. He and Dad didn't speak for 10 years. Then Walter won't have to know. Melissa covered a smile with her water glass. Scott leaned back. He had Walter's broad shoulders and Evelyn's unfortunate habit of taking disagreement as a personal invitation. At 44, he ran a contracting business from a converted tire shop north of town. The business had expanded from 2 trucks to 7 in less than 3 years, and every time Evelyn saw the fleet, she thought it looked impressive and expensive in equal measure. "Noah is overpriced," he said. "He gave me a reasonable estimate." "For what?" "For fixing my porch. I could have looked at it." "I asked you in March. You said it wasn't urgent." "It wasn't in March." Rain has continued its reckless campaign since then. Melissa laughed. Even Diane's mouth twitched, but she kept her eyes on the ceiling. "How much?" Diane asked. $700 if the damage is where he thinks it is. More if he opens it up and finds rot. And the main roof? The main roof is fine. It's 22 years old. It was 22 years old yesterday, and we all slept. Diane folded her napkin beside her plate. She was 48 and had inherited none of Walter's physical softness. Everything about her appeared deliberate, from her silver blonde bob to the square watch on her wrist. She managed patient scheduling for a medical practice with 6 locations, which meant she spent her workdays making order out of illness, lateness, insurance, and panic. Evelyn admired her for it. She also occasionally wanted to hide her label maker. "I'm not criticizing," Diane said. Scott reached for another roll. That means she's about to criticize. I'm trying to understand the plan. Evelyn looked at her. The plan for the porch, the plan for all of it. There it was again, all of it. The roof, the gutters, the lawn, the basement steps. Evelyn's shoulder, the fact that she had forgotten a cousin's birthday in April. The 3 pounds she had lost during Walter's final month and never put back on. The house had become evidence. Outside, rain tapped the windows over the buffet. It was a soft rain, hardly enough to make a sound, but Evelyn could hear a drop striking the aluminum basin Noah had placed beneath the porch leak. Plink. Pause. Plink. Melissa set down her fork. Di's only saying this is a lot for one person. I am one person, not half of one. Nobody said you were. You've been saying it in installments since Christmas. Scott chewed and looked toward the kitchen, suddenly fascinated by the refrigerator. Diane remained calm. That was her most infuriating talent. The house costs money. It takes work. You're here alone. I'm aware. What happens when something bigger than the porch goes? I call somebody. What if you fall? I call somebody from the floor. Mom. There it is. Melissa touched Evelyn's wrist. Her hand was warm, her nails bitten short despite an expensive-looking coat of pale polish. At 40, Melissa worked in the billing department of a freight company and apologized to furniture when she bumped into it. She lived 12 minutes away and was forever meaning to visit on Thursday. We worry, she said. Evelyn knew that. The knowledge did not soften the pressure as much as it ought to have. Worry could be love with nowhere to go. It could also be a crowbar. Scott gestured with his fork toward the walls. You could get good money for this place. People are paying stupid prices in this neighborhood. I don't want people paying intelligent prices. You know what I mean. Diane said, There are nice communities with maintenance included. The one I sent you has a fitness room. Evelyn looked at her own body. Do they require you to use it? That's not the point. Then it's already my favorite room. This time they all laughed, and for a moment, dinner became dinner again. Scott passed Melissa the potatoes. Diane told them about a doctor who had spent an entire morning blaming the scheduling software before discovering his computer was not plugged in. Evelyn refilled glasses and felt the familiar warmth of feeding people she knew, down to their smallest noises. Then, Melissa began stacking plates before Evelyn had finished eating. It was a tiny thing, helpful, sensible. She had done it 100 times. Still, Evelyn heard herself say, I think I may sell. The plates stopped clinking. Scott looked at Diane. Diane looked directly at Evelyn. Really? Melissa asked. Evelyn cut the last piece of carrot in half. She had expected relief, perhaps. She had expected one of them to say she should not decide too quickly. She might even have expected Scott to look around the room and remember that he had once punched a fist through the wall beside the pantry. Walter made him patch it himself, and the repair remained faintly visible beneath the paint. Instead, Scott asked, When? I said May. But you're considering it, Diane said. Yes. A change came over the table, subtle as a pressure drop before a storm. Diane sat straighter. Scott glanced toward the den. Melissa carried the plates to the kitchen and returned too quickly. You wouldn't want to list in winter, Scott said. If you're serious, you should move fast. I have not called an agent. I know too, Diane said. I haven't decided where I'd go. You could stay with me while you look. The guest room is empty. Evelyn pictured Diane's guest room with its white coverlet and decorative pillows arranged like sealed envelopes. She pictured asking permission to fry bacon. I'm not moving into your house. Temporarily. No duration improves it. Diane exhaled through her nose. Fine. We're getting ahead of ourselves. They were. Evelyn could feel them racing forward, each in a separate lane. Scott asked whether Walter had kept receipts for the replacement windows. Diane wanted to know how much remained on the home equity loan. Melissa wondered aloud whether the walnut dining table would fit in her apartment, then turned pink and said she was only thinking practically. Evelyn looked at Walter's empty chair. For 14 months, she had been waiting for grief to change shape. People told her it would. At first it was supposed to be a wave, then a tunnel, then a coat she would learn to wear. To Evelyn it felt more like living beside a running appliance. Some days she barely noticed the hum. Then everything else would go quiet, and it was all she could hear. She did not know if she wanted the house. That was the truth she had not managed to say. Some mornings the rooms held her upright. Other mornings they seemed to be waiting for her to become another object inside them. But uncertainty was not consent. After dinner, Diane stood beneath the ceiling stain and took a photograph. For what? Evelyn asked. So we have it. Who is we? Diane slipped the phone into her purse. I'll call you tomorrow. Scott paused at the den. Through the doorway, Walter's desk was visible beneath stacks of folders. Dad's tools still in the garage? Most of them. We should go through those before you list. Some are worth money. They were worth money when your father was alive, too. I'm just saying don't let an estate company take advantage. I haven't hired an estate company. Good, don't. Melissa hugged her longest. At the door she said, You're sure you're okay tonight? I was until everybody started asking. That's not an answer. It's the answer I have. When they had gone, Evelyn cleared the table. She moved Walter's chair out, swept crumbs from beneath it, then pushed it back into precisely the same place. Her phone chimed while she was wrapping the pot roast. Diane had created a group message called Mom House. Evelyn stared at the name until the screen dimmed. By Friday, Diane had sent listings for 3 apartments, a checklist titled Downsizing Without Stress, and the name of a real estate agent Evelyn had not requested. Scott asked for photographs of the garage. Melissa texted that she had access to free boxes from work. Evelyn replied once, I have not made a decision. Diane answered with a heart. On Saturday morning, standing at the upstairs window, Evelyn understood that they had read her uncertainty as a delay they were entitled to solve. She dressed without hurrying, gray slacks, blue sweater, socks, shoes. Her hands shook only when she fastened her watch. Downstairs, the front door stood open. Diane had arranged coffee and egg sandwiches on the kitchen counter. Melissa was wrapping Evelyn's china in newspaper. Each box had a colored circle on the side. Blue, green, yellow, red. What do the colors mean? Evelyn asked. Melissa looked toward Diane. Diane removed a roll of tape from her mouth. Blue goes to storage. Green is mine. Yellow is Scott. And Melissa picked pink, but the store was out, so she's orange. Red is donate or discard. Evelyn picked up the chipped blue bowl beside the sink. A red sticker covered the little white flower painted inside it. From the garage came the scrape of Walter's tool chest, crossing concrete. Evelyn peeled off the sticker, pressed it onto Diane's checklist, and walked toward the driveway. Scott had reached the first truck when Evelyn stepped onto the porch, put it back. He kept walking for 2 more steps, either because the tool chest was heavy or because he had not yet accepted that she meant him. The movers had stopped beside the ramp. One of them, a narrow man with a reddish beard, studied the truck's ceiling with professional interest. Scott lowered the chest onto the driveway. Mom, this thing weighs 80 pounds. It weighed 80 pounds in the garage. I'm trying not to throw out my back. Then don't carry things that aren't yours. Diane came through the front door. Can we please discuss this inside? Evelyn looked past her. The foyer was full of boxes. One of the framed photographs had been removed from the wall, leaving a clean rectangle in the wallpaper. No? Mom, the neighbors are outside. Mrs. Pritchard was indeed standing across the street in pink gardening gloves, examining the same hydrangea for the 3rd time. A garage door 2 houses down had risen 6 inches and stopped. Evelyn said, Then speak clearly. Scott straightened. Dad told me I could have his tools. When? A bunch of times. Name one. What do you mean, name one? One time. Where were you standing? What did he say? Scott's face hardened. I didn't record it. No. You just remembered it after he died. That's not fair. You carried his tool chest out of my garage without asking me. Because we're clearing the garage. Who is we? Diane stepped between them, though neither had moved. Nobody is stealing anything. Scott is storing the tools so the movers can get to the shelving and the larger pieces. Evelyn turned to the bearded mover. His shirt said, Columbus Best Move in large blue letters, a claim he seemed too tired to defend. Who hired you? The man glanced at Diane. Work order is under Harper, Diane's married name. Whose belongings are you moving? Another glance. Ma'am, I just have the inventory they gave us. Show her, Diane said. Her voice had acquired the smooth, careful tone she used when she believed everyone else was making an event needlessly difficult. The mover took a folded sheet from his back pocket. Evelyn did not reach for it. Where are you taking my furniture? Some to a storage facility on Westerville Road. The other truck has 2 local drops. Diane's house and Scott's, Evelyn assumed. Perhaps Melissa's orange stickers earned a corner of somebody else's truck. Nothing leaves this property, Evelyn said. The mover rubbed his beard. Okay, Diane said. Wait, no. We paid a deposit. I'm sorry to hear it. It's non-refundable if we cancel after arrival. Then I hope this morning becomes a treasured family memory. Melissa had come to the porch carrying a stack of newspapers against her chest. Ink marked the side of her hand. Mom, we didn't mean to upset you. What did you mean to do? Help. By taking apart my dining table before breakfast, we were going to put it in storage. Why? So the house could be ready. For what? Melissa looked miserable. Pictures? What pictures? The listing, Diane answered. Empty rooms photographed larger. Once you chose an agent, we could move quickly. I did not choose an agent. That's why I said once. Evelyn stared at her daughter. Diane's logic was always perfectly paved. It led wherever Diane had already decided they were going. You arrange movers for a house I have not listed, to take me to an apartment I have not chosen after I said I might sell. You said you were considering it. I also considered bangs last year. Thank God you didn't bring scissors. The younger mover coughed into his fist. Scott looked at him sharply. Diane pressed her lips together. We all took the day off. It's Saturday. Scott moved a job. Melissa traded shifts. That makes this worse, not better. Scott nudged the tool chest with his boot. Can we not turn this into some huge betrayal? We showed up. Most people would be grateful their family showed up. Most people would knock. The door was open. Because Diane has a key. Diane's eyes flickered. Evelyn saw it and understood something small but important. You unlocked my house before I was awake? We wanted to get started. You entered my house while I was sleeping. We're your children, Scott said. You're adults with addresses. Mrs. Pritchard's shears clicked across the street. The red-bearded mover refolded his inventory. Mrs. Harper, we need a decision. We can wait 15 minutes, but after that we're on standby rates. Diane did not look at him. Mom, why don't you have some coffee? Nobody has to take anything you want to keep. Evelyn thought of the colored stickers. Green for Diane, yellow for Scott, orange for Melissa, red for the things deemed unworthy of storage. Blue was the only color assigned to Evelyn, and even that meant someplace away from her. She went to the tool chest and gripped one handle. Her shoulder objected immediately. Scott reached for the other side. What are you doing? Putting it back. You'll hurt yourself. Then help me. His hand hovered. For a moment he looked like the boy he had been after punching the pantry wall, furious, ashamed, waiting for Walter to decide which feeling mattered. Then he caught the handle. They carried the chest up the driveway without speaking. It swung awkwardly between them, forcing Evelyn to shorten her steps. In the garage, the open space where it had stood seemed brighter than the rest of the concrete. Right there, she said. Scott lowered it harder than necessary. A socket rolled from beneath the workbench, crossed the floor, and tapped Evelyn's shoe. Scott looked around the garage. Walter's pegboard still held the outlines of missing tools drawn in black marker. He had believed every object should announce its proper place. The workbench was scarred with saw cuts and dark circles from coffee cans. A portable radio sat on a shelf with the cord wrapped around it. He wanted me to have these, Scott said quietly. Then why didn't you ask? I knew what you'd say. That is not the defense you think it is. He shoved his hands into his pockets. You don't use any of it. Neither did he for the last year of his life. It still belonged to him. Scott looked away. Evelyn bent and picked up the socket. It was greasy enough to stain her fingers. If your father made you a promise, we'll talk about it. We will not discuss it while there's a truck waiting to carry away my bed. Nobody was taking your bed to my place. What a comfort. When she returned outside, the movers were raising the ramps. Diane stood with her arms crossed while Melissa collected flattened boxes from the lawn. You canceled? Evelyn asked. Diane's jaw worked. You made your position clear. I thought I had on Tuesday. No. On Tuesday you said you might sell, then you refused to answer basic questions. I answered the only question that existed. I hadn't decided. You have no idea how difficult it is to help you. Evelyn nearly laughed, not because it was funny, but because Diane's anger had finally torn through the polished surface. Then stop. The first truck pulled away. Its tires popped one of the plastic air pillows that had blown from a box. The sound made Melissa jump. The second driver waited for Scott to move his pickup, then followed. Within a minute, the street was quiet except for the idling hatchback and Mrs. Pritchard's shears. Diane picked up her purse from the porch. The sandwiches are on the counter. You have my spare key, for emergencies. This was not one. What if you lock yourself out? I'll call somebody. Diane laughed once without humor. That's your answer for everything now. It has worked for plumbers and electricians. I'm optimistic about locksmiths. You're changing the locks? Yes. Because we came to help you move? Because you came into my house while I was asleep. Diane's face changed. The anger did not disappear, but something underneath it did. A certainty, perhaps, or the assumption that whatever happened between them would remain within familiar limits. You'd really do that. I really will. Melissa set the boxes down. Can everybody please take an hour? No, Diane said. She wants us gone. Evelyn did not correct her. Diane walked to her SUV. She placed the unused packing tape in the back with care, closed the hatch, and drove away without waving. Scott remained in the garage another 5 minutes. Evelyn could hear him moving things, though she had told him not to. When he emerged, he had Walter's radio tucked beneath his arm. I bought Dad that, he said before she could speak. Father's Day. 2 years ago. Evelyn remembered. Walter had pretended not to like its digital tuning and then used it every afternoon. Take it. Scott hesitated, as if permission spoiled something. I wasn't asking. No, you've established that. He carried the radio to his truck. The empty shelf in the garage bothered her more than the radio leaving. She watched him drive away and hated that she wanted him to come back before he reached the corner. Melissa stayed. She returned the china to the cabinet, though she put the gravy boat where the sugar bowl belonged. She reassembled the dining table legs with the small wrench from the plastic bag Diane had labeled hardware, do not lose. Neither woman spoke until the table was upright. Did you know they were coming in before I woke up? Evelyn asked. Melissa sat back on her heels. Yes. The honest answer hurt cleanly. Whose idea were the trucks? Melissa picked at a strip of tape stuck to her thumb. Mine? Evelyn steadied herself against the table. I get discounts through work, Melissa rushed on. Not discounts exactly. We use that company for local transfers, and I knew they had an opening. Diane had the storage unit. Scott said he'd move his job. It just lined up. Like a funeral. That's a horrible thing to say. It felt like one. Melissa's eyes filled, which irritated Evelyn because tears had always rearranged a room around Melissa. I thought if we did the physical part, you wouldn't have to, she said. The physical part of a decision I hadn't made. I know how it sounds. I know how it looked. Melissa wiped beneath one eye with the heel of her hand, leaving a faint streak of newspaper ink. Every time we ask what you want, you make a joke, or you say you'll call somebody. You don't tell us anything. Then we go home, and Diane texts all night, and Scott says she's overreacting, but he calls me separately to ask if you're eating. Nobody knows what to do. So, you emptied the house. We emptied half a dining room. You labeled my bowl garbage. Melissa looked toward the kitchen. Which bowl? Evelyn closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, Melissa was staring at her, as if the question itself had answered something. I'm sorry, Melissa said. Evelyn walked to the front door. Take the boxes when you go. Mom, I need to make a phone call. The locksmith arrived shortly after 2 in a dented white van. He was a heavy-set man named Carl, who whistled through his teeth and had no interest in why 3 exterior locks suddenly required changing. Evelyn liked him immediately. Melissa's boxes were gone by then. The egg sandwiches remained untouched on the counter. While Carl worked on the back door, Evelyn carried the chipped blue bowl upstairs. She washed it first, dried it with Walter's old dish towel, and placed it in the top drawer of her dresser beneath 2 folded nightgowns. She knew hiding it was foolish. She also knew she would not let any of them put another sticker on it. Carl handed her 2 brass keys and one with a blue plastic cap. The blue one's the back door, he said. I'd have made them match, but that cylinder's newer. How much newer? He squinted at the lock as though it might confess. 10 years, maybe. That's practically an infant around here. Carl gave her a sideways look, decided she was joking, and laughed. Want 4 copies of each? 2? Family? No. He waited. 1 for me, Evelyn said, and 1 for the person I choose. Carl nodded as if this were a standard security arrangement, wrote the total on a carbon form, and left the duplicate keys in 2 neat piles on the kitchen counter. After his van pulled away, the house seemed to expand around her. Every room held evidence of interruption: a lamp unplugged in the den, empty nails where photographs had hung, a curled strip of orange tape stuck to the hallway rug. One dining chair sat upside down on the sofa because nobody had put it back after the table was reassembled. Evelyn carried it into the dining room. Her shoulder burned before she reached the doorway, and she nearly dropped the chair against the wall. "Fine," she said to nobody. She turned it right side up and sat in it until the ache settled. The group message on her phone had gone silent. She opened it anyway. Above her own unanswered sentence, "I have not made a decision," Diane's planning filled the screen. Saturday plan, 7 o'clock, coffee/breakfast. 7:15, upstairs clothes and linens. 8:30, garage. 10 o'clock, large furniture. 12 o'clock, lunch. 12:30, donations. 2 o'clock, storage. Melissa had responded with a thumbs up. Scott had asked if there would be enough room in the storage unit for the lathe. Diane said Scott should take whatever tools had already been promised to him, since there was no sense paying to store them. Evelyn read that line twice. Then she scrolled higher. Diane had added her to the group only after the trucks were arranged. Before that, the conversation must have existed without her under some other name. Its decisions already made. Mom House was not a discussion. It was a bulletin board. She set the phone face down and ate one of the egg sandwiches cold. Diane had remembered that she hated cheese on eggs. The sandwich was wrapped in foil and marked Mom in Diane's precise block printing. That almost undid her. People liked cruelty to arrive looking cruel. It would have been easier if Diane had forgotten breakfast, if Scott had broken the lock, if Melissa had laughed while putting the red sticker on the bowl. Instead, they had brought the coffee Evelyn preferred, patted her china, and planned to donate what they could not use. They loved her. They had simply removed her from the list of people whose consent mattered. The next morning, Evelyn dressed for church and then did not go. She imagined 3 separate conversations stopping when she entered the fellowship hall. Diane might not have told anyone yet, but Evelyn had raised her children. She knew how fast they sought witnesses when they had believed themselves injured. At 10, the phone rang. She answered on the 4th ring. "Hello? Did the locks work overnight?" Diane asked. "They did. Good." Evelyn waited. Diane said, "I won't apologize for worrying about you. I didn't ask you to apologize for that. I'm not going to apologize for trying to help either. Then this will be a short call." A pause. Evelyn heard a cabinet close at Diane's end. "You embarrassed me in front of strangers. You ordered strangers into my house. They were movers, not burglars. Then, they were in the wrong line of work yesterday." Diane inhaled sharply. "This is exactly what I mean. You turn everything into a joke so nobody can say anything real." The accusation landed because Melissa had made the same one. Evelyn looked at the empty hook beside the refrigerator, where a duplicate back door key had hung for years. Walter used to leave it there. Even though Evelyn said a key kept beside the door, it opened defeated the larger philosophy of locks. "I'm listening," she said. Diane seemed unprepared for that. "I think you're lonely," she said at last. "I think you're pretending the house is manageable because admitting it isn't feels like admitting something about Dad. I think you wait until things break, then act like we're unreasonable for noticing. And I think one day something is going to happen, and we'll all have to live with the fact that you wouldn't let us help." Somewhere inside Evelyn's indignation, a smaller voice admitted that parts of this were true. She said, "You don't get to solve your fear by overruling me. I'm your daughter. You keep saying that like it gives you a permit. Fine. Do whatever you want. I intend to." Diane hung up. The porch dripped all afternoon, although the rain had stopped. Noah Price arrived Monday morning in a brown work jacket with a thermos under one arm and a folded section of rotten trim in the other. He set the wood on Evelyn's kitchen table. "Your $700 problem got promoted," he said. "To what?" $1,400 if the beam behind this is sound. Closer to 21 if it isn't." "You said 7. I also said, if the damage stops at the soffit." It did not stop at the soffit. Apparently it had ambitions. Noah was 58, tall in the loose-jointed way of a folding ladder, with gray beginning at his temples and sawdust embedded in the seams of his boots. He had worked with Walter for nearly 17 years, first installing floors, later running crews. Then one day he had stopped coming to the house. Walter called him ungrateful. Noah called Walter something Evelyn had pretended not to hear through the closed office door. They had not spoken again. You opened it Thursday, she said. Why am I just hearing this? Because Friday I priced lumber, and Saturday your driveway looked like a distribution center. You saw the trucks? Half the county saw the trucks. That'll please Diane. She was concerned about privacy. He poured coffee from his thermos. You moving? I don't know. Noah leaned against the counter and examined her face. He had always been better than Walter at letting silence become uncomfortable enough to produce an honest answer. My children think I am. Children are optimists. They arranged it. The move, the trucks. They came to empty the house. Noah's eyebrows rose, but he did not offer outrage on demand. Had you sold it? No. Did you ask them to empty it? No. Then that seems inefficient. Evelyn laughed despite herself. That's your judgment? I've found anger is more useful after coffee. He nodded toward the coffee maker. Evelyn poured herself a cup, then carried it to the table. The section of rotten wood gave off a damp, earthy smell. Walter would have patched this, she said. Walter would have covered it with aluminum and declared victory. He kept this house standing 40 years. He also believed caulk was structural. She waited for the old loyalty to rise in her, the reflex to defend her husband even when he was plainly wrong. It came, but weaker than before. What happened between you two? She asked. Noah studied his thermos lid. That's a bigger estimate. I'm considering selling. I need to know what the house requires. That doesn't require excavating ancient grudges. It's my kitchen. Still your kitchen, then. She looked up sharply. Noah raised one hand. That came out wrong. It came out like everybody else. I asked a question badly. Your kids apparently arrived with commercial vehicles. There's a scale. He took the rotten trim and turned it over. I can brace the corner today. If the beam is bad, I'll show you before I replace anything. You decide. The words were ordinary. You decide. Evelyn stared into her coffee until the surface stopped moving. Do that, she said. While Noah worked outside, she went into the den and stood before Walter's desk. It was not merely cluttered. It had layers. The top layer belonged to the final year of his life. Pharmacy receipts, insurance statements, a yellow legal pad covered with medication times. Beneath that were business folders, invoices, tax returns, customer lists, and envelopes on which Walter had worked arithmetic in thick pencil. Evelyn had kept the books until the business closed 6 years earlier, but Walter had continued moving money around after she thought there was nothing left to move. The home equity statement was in the second drawer beneath a pad of expired checks. She carried it to the dining table. The balance was not a surprise. She had signed the papers. Still, the number looked larger in daylight. $38,614.22. Most of it had paid for Walter's treatments and the bathroom changes he needed near the end. Some had covered the last payroll when 2 customers delayed payment. Walter had insisted his men would not miss checks because he was sick. Evelyn had agreed. She fetched a notebook and began writing. Property tax, insurance, gas, electric, water, lawn service, though she had canceled it in May and had been cutting the grass in sections because her shoulder could not manage the whole yard at once. The monthly amount sat on the page, plain and unkind. Then she wrote her Social Security, the small survivor benefit from Walter's policy, and the amount in savings. The gap was not catastrophic. It was worse in a quieter way. The house consumed a little more than she could comfortably give it each month, and every repair widened the mouth. Noah tapped on the window and held up a blackened strip of wood. The beam was bad. By noon, the dining table had disappeared under papers. Evelyn found 3 different estimates for roof work Walter had never scheduled, a receipt for the replacement windows Scott had asked about, and an envelope containing $400 in cash labeled Christmas 2019. She sat with it in her hand, briefly offended that Walter had hidden money badly enough for her to find it 6 years late. Then she laughed. She used $40 to buy lunch. Noah ate his roast beef sandwich on the porch steps, beside the open wound in the ceiling. Evelyn sat in a lawn chair on the walkway. If I fix what matters, she asked, what am I looking at? On the whole house? Yes. You want the polite number or the useful one? The useful one. He rubbed a thumb along the edge of his sandwich wrapper. Porch, damaged wall in the laundry room, exterior paint where it's failing, service on the furnace. Main roof might have 3 years, might have 7. I wouldn't replace it to sell unless an inspection forces the issue. You knew about the laundry room wall? I have eyes. How much? For all of it? Maybe 12,000. More if the wall has been wet long enough to rot the studs. Evelyn looked at the house. From the street it remained handsome. Red brick, black shutters, deep porch, mature maple shading the west windows. Walter had laid the front walk himself in 1989. It sloped slightly left because Scott, then a teenager, had stepped on the wet edge after being told not to. $12,000 was not ruin. It was also not money she could spend merely to prove she could remain. I need to know what it's worth, she said. Noah balled his wrapper in one fist. Sounds sensible. My children think they know. Children are also appraisers now? They're very gifted. He smiled, then grew serious. Knowing doesn't commit you. That evening, Evelyn removed Diane's real estate agent from the list on her phone without calling her. She asked Mrs. Pritchard for the name of the woman who had sold the house across the street. Before bed, she took the blue bowl from beneath her nightgowns and returned it to the kitchen cabinet. The locks were changed. The bowl was hers. If the house was going to be sold, she would be the one standing inside it when the decision was made. Mrs. Pritchard supplied the agent's name before Evelyn finished asking. Caroline Voss, she said over the hedge. She sold the Brennan's place in 6 days. Was it priced correctly? No idea, but the sign came down. That could mean termites. Mrs. Pritchard removed one pink glove and wrote the number on the back of a grocery receipt. You're not really leaving, are you? I'm learning what leaving would involve. Your children know? Evelyn accepted the receipt. They're familiar with the general concept. Caroline Voss came Wednesday in flat shoes and a navy dress with pockets. She was in her early 60s with blunt gray hair and the patient gaze of someone accustomed to being shown water heaters by anxious strangers. She did not arrive carrying brochures about retirement communities. She did not call the house adorable or Evelyn young lady. Both facts improved Evelyn's opinion of her. They started outside. Caroline photographed the porch damage, the roof line, and the shaded side of the house where the brick stayed green after rain. She asked about the windows, furnace, property taxes, and home equity balance without lowering her voice on the last question. Inside, she opened closets with permission and taps without it. She stood in each room long enough to make Evelyn see it differently. The table stays for photographs, Caroline said in the dining room. Why? It gives the room scale. Empty rooms don't always look larger. Sometimes they look like nobody wanted them. Evelyn thought of Diane's checklist and liked Caroline more. In the kitchen, Caroline ran one finger along the laminate counter. Buyers may complain. Buyers complain about granite too. They do. Laminate simply gives them vocabulary. What would you do? Clean it. Replace the faucet. Leave the counters alone. Anyone who hates them will tear them out whether you spend money first or not. She did not turn kind when she reached the den. Boxes of records occupied one wall. Walter's desk sat beneath the window, surrounded by files Evelyn had pulled from drawers and not returned. The yellow medication pad remained on top. This room needs work, Caroline said. I know, not renovation, decisions. That's worse. It usually is. She crouched beside a banker's box marked Mercer Flooring, 2011. How long has the business been closed? 6 years? You likely don't need all this. I likely don't. Caroline stood. You don't have to throw out your life to sell a house, but a buyer needs enough empty space to imagine fitting theirs beside it. The phrasing stayed with Evelyn. At the kitchen table, Caroline opened a folder of comparable sales. 3 nearby houses had sold within the past 4 months. One had a new kitchen, but no garage. Another had fewer bedrooms and a finished basement. The third was nearly Evelyn's house in reverse. Same year, same brick, a porch on the opposite side. Without the repairs, I'd expect offers around 410, Caroline said. Possibly lower after inspection. Address the active water issues, service the furnace, clean, paint selectively, and I'd suggest listing near 439. That doesn't mean you receive 439. I understand how asking works. I have to say it. People fall in love with the first number. Evelyn looked at the sales sheet. 439,000 seemed enormous until she began subtracting. Loan balance, commission, repairs, closing costs, moving, a new place. How quickly would it sell? If priced well, 2 weeks, perhaps 6. The market is active, but buyers have become picky again. You could also sit for 3 months. Anyone who guarantees otherwise is selling you, not the house. Do you think I should do it? Caroline closed the folder. That's not the same as asking whether I can sell it. No. I think the house is a financial strain you can solve by selling. Whether it is the right strain to solve depends on what you'd be buying with the trouble. Not much trouble, ideally. That's not a place. Evelyn heard Diane asking for the plan. The difference was that Caroline did not have one prepared for her. I'm not ready to list, she said. Then don't. Caroline left the folder but took the contract she had not asked Evelyn to sign. On her way out, she touched the restored edge of the dining table. Good piece. My children nearly put it in storage. Storage is where furniture goes to become a monthly bill. After Caroline drove away, Evelyn returned to the table with a calculator. She wrote the optimistic sale price at the top of a clean sheet, then the cautious one beneath it. By the time she accounted for everything, the grand sum had become an amount that could buy a modest condominium outright or most of a small duplex, with enough left to make breathing easier. It was not wealth. It was years without wondering whether a furnace noise meant she should skip dental work. Evelyn photographed the page and sent it to nobody. Instead, she opened Mom House. I had the house valued today, she typed. I may sell after repairs. I have not signed anything. This is information, not a request for action. Melissa responded first. Can I call? Scott wrote. Who did the valuation? Diane's reply took 10 minutes. Thank you for letting us know. The courtesy of it made Evelyn's stomach tighten. Scott called before she could answer him. $439, he said, when she told him Caroline's suggested list price. That's low. It is more than I paid. That's irrelevant. It cheers me. Who is this woman? A real estate agent? I know she's an agent. Is she any good? She arrived without a moving truck. Can you let that go for 5 minutes? Saturday occupied more than 5. Scott exhaled. In the background, metal struck metal, and someone called his name. I have a guy, he said. He sold a place for one of my clients. Same area, smaller house, got $480. When? Last year. Then it was not the same market. You're going to leave 50 grand on the table because Diane upset you? Evelyn gripped the phone. You were carrying your father's tools down the driveway. I brought the radio back. She went still. What? It's outside your garage. I stopped by this morning. You came here? I left it by the side door. The blue-capped key had not yet been given to anyone. Evelyn pictured the radio sitting on concrete beneath the eave, its cord wrapped tightly around the handle. Why? Because it's yours, apparently. I told you to take it. Yeah, well. His bitterness sounded too much like hurt. Scott, I have to work. Just don't sign with anybody yet. I wasn't planning to. Good. That doesn't mean I'm waiting for your permission. He hung up. The radio was where he said, sheltered beneath the drip line. A dark, wet mark showed where it had first been placed too close to the edge, then moved back. Evelyn carried it into the garage with both hands and set it on Walter's empty shelf. She plugged it in. After a burst of static, a country station came through. Walter had disliked country music. Scott loved it. Evelyn stood beside the workbench, listening to a man sing about a truck, a woman, and a regrettable decision in an order she could not determine. Her phone rang again. This time, it was Melissa. I'm not calling to tell you what to do, she began. Excellent. We have room for a new family specialty. I deserve that. Evelyn sat on Walter's stool. What do you want? To apologize without explaining. That sounds difficult. It is. I practiced in the car. Evelyn waited. Melissa drew a breath. I'm sorry I arranged the trucks. I'm sorry I came into your house when you were asleep. I'm sorry I helped make decisions about your things. It was wrong. The directness left nowhere for Evelyn's anger to perform. She ran her thumb over a dried drop of varnish on the stool. Thank you. I also want to explain. There she is. Not today, Melissa said quickly. Maybe later. From the radio came an advertisement for replacement windows. Melissa asked, Are you really selling? I may. Does that mean you forgive us? No. Okay. Another answer without defense. Evelyn disliked how much it moved her. I have boxes of business records, she said. If you still have access to those free cartons, bring 6. No movers. Just me, just you. Tomorrow, 6:30, I'll be there. She arrived at 6:22 with 8 cartons, 2 deli salads, and no tape. I thought tape might feel aggressive, she said. Evelyn looked at her. Too soon? A little. They carried the cartons into the den. Melissa paused at Walter's desk, taking in the yellow medication pad, the dead calculator, the mug filled with sharpened pencils. I haven't been in here since Dad, neither have I, properly. They began with receipts. Evelyn made piles for tax records, medical papers, business history, and shredding. Melissa did not question Evelyn's choices until she found a folder of unpaid customer invoices from the business's final year. These people never paid? Some did. Your father stopped marking the copies. Thousands of dollars? Possibly. Most are too old to pursue, and I'm not pursuing them. Melissa turned over an invoice. Scott thinks Dad left money in the business. Scott thinks money becomes more plentiful when a person dies. That's not fair. No. Evelyn expected Melissa to defend him further. Instead, she placed the invoice in the shredding pile. At 8, they ate salads from their plastic containers on the floor. Melissa had brought the kind with candied pecans, which Evelyn considered dessert pretending to have lettuce. Diane's furious with me, Melissa said, for apologizing, for telling her the trucks were my idea. She thinks I'm letting you blame me so I can become the good one. Are you? Melissa considered it. Maybe a little. Evelyn smiled despite herself. She's scared, Melissa continued. She found a senior apartment for Aunt Celia after Uncle George died. Celia waited too long, fell in the basement, and Diane had to handle everything. Celia was 86 and kept canned peaches beside the furnace. I know, you're not Celia, but Diane doesn't. Diane knows exactly who I am. She forgets when fear is more convenient. Melissa leaned against the file cabinet. What do you want instead? The question was so simple that Evelyn almost made a joke. She looked around the den, at the records of a business that no longer existed, and a marriage that had. Outside, Noah's temporary brace cast a diagonal shadow across the porch window. I don't know yet, she said. Melissa nodded. Okay. No checklist appeared. No suggestion followed. The next afternoon, Evelyn called Lorna Beck. They had worked side by side at Mercer Flooring during its busiest 8 years. Evelyn handling the books while Lorna answered phones, soothed installers, and remembered which customers took sugar. After Lorna left to care for her own husband, their friendship had thinned to Christmas cards and occasional lunches neither woman scheduled. Lorna answered with, If you're calling to sell me flooring, I still have enough samples to roof a shed. I'm considering selling my house. There was a pause. Well, Lorna said, that's either wonderful or terrible. I haven't decided. Then it's both. I need to see how other people live. What kind of other people? Women who can reach all their gutters without a ladder. Lorna laughed. Come Friday. My gutters are somebody else's problem, and I have wine. Evelyn looked through the window at the porch, the maple, and the uneven front walk. I'll bring dinner. Bring nothing. I'm not one of your children. It was the most appealing invitation Evelyn had received in months. Lorna's duplex stood at the end of a short row of nearly identical brick buildings, each with one shallow step, a square patch of grass, and a mailbox close enough to reach without shoes. The units had been built in the 70s and renovated in different decades according to the courage of their owners. Lorna's front door was mustard yellow. Her neighbor's was the brown of orthopedic footwear. Evelyn parked beneath a crabapple tree and remained in the car longer than necessary. This was the sort of place Diane had been sending her, though those listings used phrases like effortless living and active lifestyle. In person, the gutters were low, the windows modest, and somebody's recycling bin had tipped over beside the communal drive. Lorna opened the yellow door before Evelyn reached it. You brought dinner. It's pie. Pie is dinner after 65. Lorna Beck had turned 70 in February and wore her white hair in a thick braid over one shoulder. She had gained weight since Evelyn last saw her, and carried it with the ease of a woman who had ceased negotiating with mirrors. Her purple reading glasses hung from a beaded cord against a black t-shirt that said, Ask me about my terrible ideas. They hugged carefully at first, then harder. You feel the same, Lorna said. You feel padded. Martin used to say that. I liked Martin. So did I. Come in before I start charging admission. The duplex was smaller than Evelyn expected. The front door opened directly into a living room where an upright piano competed with 2 armchairs, a long sofa, 3 bookcases, and a round table covered with a half-finished jigsaw puzzle. Framed photographs climbed one wall without matching. A brass floor lamp leaned slightly over the sofa, like an interested relative. Nothing had been staged. Nothing had room to feel lonely. Lorna took the pie into the kitchen, where a pot bubbled on the stove. You said, bring nothing. You knew I wouldn't. I hoped age had improved you. It has improved my pie crust. Evelyn looked through an open doorway. That the whole kitchen? It does everything except impress people. The counters were green laminate. One drawer was secured with a loop of string because it would not stay closed. Above the sink, the window looked onto a narrow side garden where herbs grew in mismatched pots. Do you own this? Evelyn asked. The bank and I finished sharing it last year. How much maintenance? Association handles roof, gutters, exterior paint, and snow. Badly, but consistently. I handle everything inside. Also badly. And the other side? Gus, retired mail carrier. Plays jazz at a volume that assumes we're all retired mail carriers. As if summoned, a trumpet phrase came through the wall. Lorna lifted one finger. That's actually Miles Davis. Gus has been educating me against my will. Evelyn moved toward a narrow hallway. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a laundry closet with folding doors. The second bedroom held a desk, sewing machine, and a daybed beneath boxes of fabric. Where do people stay? I discourage people. You have a daybed. That's where good intentions go to die. Evelyn laughed. The sound seemed to fit the low ceiling better than it fit her own tall rooms. They ate soup and bread at the round table. Lorna opened a bottle of red wine and filled Evelyn's glass without asking how much. She did not ask about the sale until they had discussed Noah Price. 3 people they both disliked from the flooring years, and whether the pie contained too much cinnamon. Why now? Lorna said. Evelyn traced the rim of her glass. The house cost too much. It cost too much 10 years ago. Walter was there 10 years ago. That can make an expensive thing feel affordable. Evelyn told her about the ceiling, the loan balance, Caroline's valuation, and the calculations spread across the dining table. She intended to stop there. Instead, she told her about waking to the trucks. Lorna listened without interrupting. Her face changed when Evelyn described the stickers. What color was I? Evelyn asked. Blue. Blue was storage, as if I were a waiting room. Lorna reached for the wine. And the bowl was red? They didn't know what it was, did they ask? No. That's the trouble. I don't care about a bowl. Of course you do. Evelyn resented how easily Lorna said it. It cost $2. Then your children can afford to respect it. The trumpet next door stopped. Pipes knocked somewhere inside the wall. Evelyn said, Diane thinks I make jokes so nobody can talk to me. Do you? Sometimes. You always did. Remember when Walter lost the courthouse job and you told everyone the city had discovered carpeting violated the Constitution? He was embarrassed. So, you became funny enough for both of you. Evelyn drank her wine. Lorna tore bread into exact squares. Doesn't make the trucks right? No. Doesn't make Diane entirely wrong either. I came here for support. You came because I don't own a moving truck. The doorbell rang before Evelyn could answer. Lorna rose without surprise. You invited someone? 2 someones. I wasn't sure whether you'd cancel. I should have. You still can. Bathroom window opens wide enough. The first guest was Gus from the other half, a lean black man with a silver beard and a bottle of bourbon he claimed was for medicinal use. The second was Noreen Tate, who had worked with Lorna at a county office after Mercer Flooring. Noreen was 56, recently divorced, and living in a furnished apartment where every wall was beige. I left a 4-bedroom house, Noreen said after introductions. Took the stand mixer and none of the attachments. That is the story of my marriage. They carried bowls into the living room. Gus moved the puzzle from the table by placing a thin board beneath it, a maneuver performed with the concentration of bomb disposal. Evelyn had not expected company. She had especially not expected to enjoy it. Nobody asked what community she was considering. Gus complained about his association fees, then admitted the maintenance crew had shoveled his front walk before dawn after his hip surgery. Noreen missed her large kitchen, but not the sound of her former husband chewing ice. Lorna missed Martin most fiercely when she found a joke he would have liked. There are evenings I don't speak to anybody, she said. Then there are evenings people arrive with bourbon and refuse to leave. Gus lifted his glass. Chosen family is still family, it just has better scheduling. Chosen family would bring ice, Lorna said. Evelyn looked around the crowded room. 4 adults with marriages ended by death or disappointment, each carrying losses nobody could fix. The warmth among them was not effortless. Gus and Lorna argued about parking. Noreen disliked jazz. Lorna had invited people without warning, which remained an offense Evelyn planned to mention later. But no one was waiting to inherit the furniture. When Evelyn left, Lorna walked her to the car. "I'm not suggesting you live here," she said. "Good. Your bathroom is too small. My bathroom is magnificent if you keep your elbows in. I noticed the drawer string. That's load-bearing." Evelyn opened the car door, then rested one hand on its frame. "Were you afraid to leave your house?" "Terrified. You never said. You never asked." The answer carried no blame, which made it feel worse. Lorna pulled her cardigan closed against the cool air. "Martin died in the bedroom. For a year, I thought selling meant I was abandoning the last place he'd been. Then I realized I'd made that room into a shrine I couldn't sleep in. I wasn't honoring him. I was paying property tax on my fear." Evelyn looked back at the mustard door. "Do you regret it? Every third Tuesday." "Less when it snows." On the drive home, Evelyn avoided the highway. She passed apartment buildings with bright balconies, a complex built around a pond, and a row of small duplexes 2 streets from Lorna's. One had a for sale sign, but she did not stop. Looking at it while still warmed by wine and company felt too much like buying groceries when hungry. At home, the radio in the garage was silent. Noah had unplugged it before leaving. Evelyn went upstairs and stood in the bedroom doorway. Walter's shirt still occupied half the closet. His slippers remained beneath the chair, one tipped on its side. She could not imagine packing them. She could not imagine leaving them forever. She turned off the light and went downstairs. On a clean page in her notebook, she wrote, "1 floor, or bedroom on 1st floor. Room for table, small garden, garage or workspace. Guest room with a door, no fitness room required. Close enough to people that asking for coffee is not an expedition. Enough money left to live." She read the list twice, then added, "I choose who has a key. Noah arrived Saturday with lumber and an apology." "For the number," he said. "You didn't rot the beam." Walter would have accused me anyway. They worked from opposite sides of the porch opening, Noah on a short scaffold, and Evelyn below, passing tools until her shoulder protested. "Sit down," he said. "You need the drill. I can climb down. That's inefficient. So is injuring the arm attached to you." She handed him the drill and sat. From inside the wall came the dry scrape of old wood. Noah removed another section, frowned, and then relaxed. "Stops here," he said. "Beam's bad at the corner, sound beyond it. 1,400, not 21. The relief was disproportionate to $700. Evelyn laughed. Noah looked down. "You all right?" "I just made money." "No, you lost less. Don't ruin it." He climbed down for coffee while the temporary support held the porch roof. At the kitchen table, Evelyn showed him Caroline's repair list. "You agree?" she asked. "Mostly." "Furnace service, yes. Paint the upstairs hall, not the whole interior. Whoever told you to replace the kitchen counters should be denied tools." "Nobody did." "Good agent, I haven't hired her." Noah stirred sugar into his coffee. "You decide whether you're selling?" "Yes." The word entered the room before Evelyn fully recognized her own voice. Noah stopped stirring. "Yes," she said again. "I'm going to sell." He did not congratulate her. He did not ask where she would go. "When?" he said. "After the repairs, after I sort the den, after I find someplace I'd rather be. That could take a while. It took my children 4 days. I'd like to be more thoughtful." That evening, Evelyn asked Diane, Scott, and Melissa to come for coffee on Sunday. Scott said he was working. Diane replied that she would be there at 11. Melissa sent a thumbs up, deleted it, then wrote, "I'll come." They sat in the living room because the dining table remained covered with calculations. Evelyn did not offer a speech. "I've decided to sell the house." Diane's shoulders lowered as if she had been holding them up all week. "Okay," she said carefully. "Where are you going?" "I don't know yet." The shoulders rose again. "Then how can you decide to sell? They are separate decisions. They shouldn't be. For me, they are." Melissa asked, "What do you need from us? Right now?" "Nothing." Diane looked toward the den. "You can't do all the clearing alone. I'm not doing it alone. I'm doing it by invitation. That's a distinction without a difference. It has made a great difference to me." Diane's expression tightened, but she stayed quiet. Evelyn took 3 new keys from her pocket. She set one on the coffee table. Melissa stared at it. "This is for you," Evelyn said, "for emergencies. An emergency is a fire, a broken pipe, or me explicitly asking you to enter. It is not an efficient Saturday morning. Melissa picked up the key as though it might be hot. Diane looked at the empty space in front of her. Evelyn let the silence remain. For once, she did not make it easier for anyone. Diane stared at Melissa's hand. You gave her a key. I entrusted her with one, Evelyn said. What's the difference? About a week. Melissa closed her fingers around the brass. I didn't ask for it. No, Diane said. That's apparently the qualification. Evelyn felt the old urge to smooth the moment. She could have said she only had one spare made. She could have promised Diane the next copy, or joked that keys were being distributed according to height. Instead, she let Diane be heard. Diane stood and carried her coffee cup to the kitchen. You don't have to wash that, Evelyn called. I'm putting it in the sink. You used to do that at home, too. Eventually. The cup struck the stainless steel harder than necessary. Melissa whispered, Mom? What? You said you weren't going to make it easier. I didn't say I was going to make it pleasant. Diane returned with her purse over one shoulder. I rearranged everything for Dad's appointments. I handled the pharmacy when they kept filling the wrong dosage. I found the shower chair. I came every day at the end. I know. And she gets the emergency key because she said, sorry first. This is not a prize. It looks like one. Evelyn glanced at Melissa. Her youngest daughter sat rigidly, wishing herself invisible while holding the object that made invisibility impossible. You're right, Evelyn said. Diane blinked. You did all those things. You were dependable when we needed you. I leaned on you until neither of us could tell where help ended and command began. So, this is punishment. It's a boundary. People always call it a boundary when they want the other person to feel punished. That was sharp enough that Evelyn almost admired it. She said, You used your key to enter my house without permission. Until I trust you not to do that, you won't have another. Diane's face reddened along the cheekbones. If something happens, call Melissa then. I will. Diane left. The front door closed without a slam, which somehow felt more final. Through the window, Evelyn watched her daughter sit behind the wheel of her SUV. Diane did not start the engine. She stayed there with both hands at the top of the steering wheel, staring through the windshield. Melissa set the key on the coffee table. No, Evelyn said. I don't want to be in the middle. You've spent 40 years in the middle. Maybe that's why nobody notices when they put you there. I helped put myself there. Then stop. Melissa looked at the key. What if she's right? What if you fall and call me and I'm at work? Then I call someone else. You really need a second answer. I'm developing one. Outside, Diane's SUV started. She backed out carefully and drove away. Melissa put the key in her purse. For the next 2 weeks, the house filled with the sounds of measured damage. Noah removed the rotten porch corner, piece by piece. A furnace technician ran the heat on an 80-degree afternoon and left Evelyn with a clean filter, a service sticker, and the prediction that the unit could last another year or another decade depending on its personality. Evelyn painted the upstairs hallway herself until her shoulder forced her to admit that ceilings were hostile territory. Noah finished the high sections without comment. They worked through Walter's den in the evenings. Melissa came twice, once with tape and once with a paper shredder borrowed from work. Lorna arrived on a Tuesday carrying sandwiches and left with 3 boxes of flooring samples for a community theater group that wanted fake wood walls. See, Lorna said, your rubbish has found artistic purpose. Walter's clothes were harder. Evelyn began with ties because ties did not smell like him. She made it through 12 before finding the green one he wore to Melissa's wedding. She sat on the closet floor with it across her knees until the light from the window moved from one wall to another. Nothing about selling a house happened only once. Every drawer demanded the same decision in a different disguise. On a Thursday morning, a blue pickup stopped outside while Noah was cutting trim in the driveway. A thick-set man in a baseball cap walked past him toward the garage. Evelyn opened the side door. Can I help you? Here for the Powermatic. The what? He pointed into the garage. Plainer. Scott said I could take a look before we settled on price. Noah's saw went silent. The man checked his phone. This is Mercer, right? Yes. Scott Mercer sent me. Said it belonged to his dad. It did. The man waited. It belongs to me now. His expression shifted from confidence to caution. He said the family was clearing the estate. Evelyn disliked the word estate. It made the house sound as though everyone inside it had already died. What price did he give you? 2,200 for the planer and the lathe together, depending on condition. The lathe. The one Diane had mentioned in the message thread before the trucks came. Noah put down the saw and wiped his hands on his jeans. He remained beside the porch, close enough to hear, but far enough to leave the conversation hers. Evelyn said, "Neither item is for sale." The man removed his cap and scratched the flattened hair beneath it. "I drove from Dayton. I'm sorry, he sent pictures. Did you give him money? Not yet. Then you've lost gas and time. I suggest you discuss both with Scott." The man looked toward the garage again. "That's a 12-inch? I have no idea. Good machine. I'm beginning to understand that." He replaced his cap. "No offense, ma'am, but you might want to talk to your son." "No offense taken. I was already planning something similar." She watched until his truck turned the corner. Noah resumed cutting. The saw screamed through the board, scattering pale dust across the driveway. Evelyn stood in the garage doorway, looking at the large green planer she had considered an inconvenient piece of metal for 20 years. There was a strip of yellow painter's tape on its base. She crouched. In Scott's handwriting, faded from the moving day, were the words "Scott Shop." Other labels appeared once she began searching. Yellow tape beneath the lathe, yellow around the handle of a compressor, a small square on Walter's drill press. These were not items Scott had grabbed in confusion. He had marked them first. Noah found her peeling tape from the compressor. "You need help?" he asked. "What are these worth? Which?" "All of them." He looked over the garage. "Depends how patient you are. Selling one by one, maybe 6,000 or 7,000. As a lot, less. Some hand tools have sentimental value and yard sale value, which rarely match. Did Walter promise them to Scott?" Noah's eyes stayed on the pegboard. "Not in front of me. That isn't what I asked. I don't know what Walter said privately. Would he have? Sure. Walter promised things when he wanted a conversation to end." Evelyn folded the strip of yellow tape onto itself. "That is not an answer either. It's the answer I have." The phrase was hers. Hearing it from Noah made her understand why Melissa had looked dissatisfied. She leaned against the workbench. "Why did you leave the business?" Noah walked to the open garage door and unplugged his saw. The sudden quiet exposed the hum of cicadas in the maple. "Walter started taking jobs too cheaply," he said. "He hated saying no, especially to old customers. We'd finish a floor and wait 60 days to get paid, sometimes longer. I told him we had to require deposits. He said people knew his word. He paid you. Usually." Evelyn's stomach tightened. "Usually? He never cheated me." That sounds carefully phrased. One Friday near the end, he asked the crew to wait until Monday. Monday became Wednesday. I covered 2 guys from my savings because rent didn't care about Walter's reputation. Evelyn remembered the payroll shortage, the home equity money, the envelopes covered in arithmetic. "He paid you back." He did. Then why the argument? Because I told him I was leaving before his pride took all of us down. He said I was abandoning him. I said he was running a charity with other people's groceries. The words must have sounded cruel in Walter's office. They sounded less cruel beside the machines Walter had left behind. "He told me you tried to take his customers," Evelyn said. "I took calls after he closed. Somebody had to finish warranty work. You could have explained." "To you?" "Yes." Noah gave her a tired look. "Would you have listened?" Evelyn wanted to say she was listening now. That would have been too easy. "No," she said. He nodded once, not triumphant, just relieved not to argue with a rewritten past. Her phone rang inside. Scott's name glowed on the screen. She let it ring until voicemail, then called him back from the garage. "Some man drove from Dayton to buy my planer," she said. Silence. "My planer," she repeated, though she had learned the name less than an hour ago. Scott said, "I was going to talk to you." "When?" "Before anything changed hands." He was standing in my driveway. He wasn't supposed to come without calling me. "That is your complaint?" "I sent him pictures weeks ago." "Weeks?" "Dad said the shop equipment would be mine eventually." "Eventually" is an interesting word to use while I'm alive. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Make me sound like I'm waiting for you to die." Evelyn looked at the yellow labels in her palm. "You arrived with trucks 4 days after I said I might sell. I need the equipment. For your business?" "Yes." "The man came to buy it." Another silence. Scott lowered his voice. "Work slow." I've got payments. How many? That's not your problem. It became my problem when you tried to sell my property. I thought we agreed those were mine. We never discussed it. Dad and I did. Then you should have collected them from him. The cruelty left Evelyn's mouth before she could stop it. Scott's breath changed. She closed her eyes. That was unfair. You think? I'm sorry I said it. You don't mean that? I do. But the answer's still no. The answer is no until I inventory everything and decide what I'm keeping, selling, or giving away. Inventory? Who put you up to that, Noah? Noah did not put me up to anything. You think he's helping you out of loyalty? He hated Dad. He's repairing the porch. He's in the garage telling you what tools are worth. Because I asked him. Scott laughed bitterly. There it is. What? You'll trust a man Dad threw out before you trust me. Evelyn looked at Noah. He had moved to the far end of the driveway, pretending to inspect a cutboard. Trust is not inherited, she said. No. Apparently houses are, but only if nobody needs anything while you're still using them. The line landed between them, ugly and revealing. Scott hung up. Evelyn remained beside Walter's workbench, phone in one hand and yellow tape in the other. On the pegboard, black outlines waited around missing tools. She began matching what remained to their shapes, writing each item in her notebook. Noah did not offer to take over. He found a second pencil, started at the opposite end, and called out the names while Evelyn wrote them down. Combination square, Noah said. Evelyn wrote it down. 2 framing squares, coping saw, 3 pull saws, although one of those is mostly rust with a handle. Does rust have sentimental value? Depends whether Walter caused it. Then probably. Noah lifted a canvas bag from beneath the bench. Flooring stapler. Singular? He looked inside, then checked the shelf where the compressor's hoses were coiled. Should be 3. Evelyn stopped writing. Walter had owned a pneumatic stapler for narrow boards, another for standard hardwood, and a heavy manual nailer old enough to appear agricultural. Evelyn remembered them because he complained each required a different size fastener, a conspiracy he blamed on manufacturers. Noah searched the lower cabinets. Manual ones here, pneumatic nailers here, the narrow crown stapler isn't. What is it worth? Used? $250 if it's clean. Anything else missing? They found the empty case for a laser level behind a stack of sanding discs. The case had an outline in gray foam, neat and accusatory. Scott may have borrowed them years ago, Noah said. He may have. Walter loaned tools like library books, except he didn't believe in due dates. Evelyn wrote missing beside both items. At the end of the inventory, 6 pages of Walter's equipment had become nouns, model numbers, and approximate values. The act felt brutal at first. By the 6th type of clamp, brutality gave way to fatigue. Noah took the pencil from behind his ear. What are you doing with it all? I haven't decided. Some can sell with the house if a buyer wants a workshop. No. He waited. I don't want it included as debris somebody agrees to remove. Fair enough. Evelyn closed the notebook. Walter built a business with these. He also used that belt sander to level a Thanksgiving turkey board. It worked. It tasted like pine. When Noah left, Evelyn photographed the empty tool cases and sent both pictures to Scott. Please return these by Friday. 3 dots appeared beneath the message, disappeared, then returned. I'll look, she typed. Look in your shop, then erased it. Diane called that evening. Evelyn nearly ignored the call, then answered because avoiding her daughter would not make either of them less stubborn. Did Scott try to sell Dad's planer? Diane asked. News travels. He called Melissa. Melissa called me. That route is longer than necessary. Is it true? Yes. I told him not to take anything until we had gone through it. You also put his name on half the garage. I labeled what he said Dad promised him. I did not tell him to sell it before you moved. The distinction mattered to Diane. Evelyn could hear it in the clipped force of each word. He sent a buyer here, Evelyn said. He what? The man drove from Dayton. Diane became very quiet. It was the quiet she used before correcting an insurance company. Don't call him, Evelyn said. Why not? Because he is my son and my problem. He's my brother. And what will you do? Schedule his remorse? I'll tell him he crossed a line. He knows. Apparently he doesn't. Evelyn sat at the dining table, where Caroline's estimates remained beneath a bowl of peaches. You crossed one too. Yes, you've made that extremely clear. Have I? You changed the locks. You're angrier about Scott taking the tools than you were about entering my house. That's different. How? Diane answered too quickly. I was trying to protect you. From what? From being alone with all of this. Evelyn glanced at the den doorway. 2 boxes had been cleared. 12 remained. You could have come alone, she said. Without trucks, without a storage unit, without 3 colors for yourselves. Diane did not respond. Evelyn continued, softer. You could have asked me to show you where it hurt. The line embarrassed her as soon as she said it. It sounded like something printed on a pillow in one of Diane's senior communities. But Diane did not laugh. I did ask, she said. After Dad died, I asked every day. You asked whether I had taken my pills. You asked whether I had eaten. You asked if the insurance forms came. What should I have asked? I don't know. That's the problem, Mom. You expect me to know what you won't say. The conversation ended without resolution. Diane did not apologize. Evelyn did not offer another key. Yet when they hung up, neither had said fine or whatever you want. The phrases they used to disguise surrender as indifference. On Friday morning, the missing stapler and laser level appeared outside the garage in a plastic storage tub. No note. Scott had cleaned both. Evelyn carried them inside one at a time and crossed missing from the inventory. The porch repair came in at $1,412 because Noah replaced an extra length of trim Evelyn had not noticed. She paid him from savings, then stood beneath the repaired corner during the first hard rain. Water ran through the gutter and away from the house. No basin waited beneath the ceiling. No drop struck aluminum. It was an absurdly satisfying silence. Caroline returned with a paint consultant who dismissed 3 shades of beige before choosing one, called Quiet Linen. Evelyn bought enough for the upstairs hall and the den. Lorna arrived on painting day in old jeans and a red bandana, bringing Gus because, she said, he owned an extension pole and owed her for parking too close to the bins. Gus looked around the den. You expect 1 coat to cover these walls? They're already cream, Evelyn said. They're smoke. Nobody smoked in here. Then the walls took it up independently. By lunch, the desk had been moved to the center of the room and draped in plastic. Evelyn stood in the doorway watching Lorna cut paint around the window frame, while Gus rolled the first clean stripe toward the ceiling. You keep staring like we're stealing, Lorna said. I'm supervising. You missed a spot. You haven't painted that wall yet. Exactly. Evelyn picked up a brush. The work moved faster with people in it. Gus sang tunelessly. Lorna told stories from the county office, changing names only after she had revealed identifying details. Noah stopped by to return a drill bit and stayed long enough to repair the drawer that Lorna had held closed with string for 4 years. Though the drawer was at her house and therefore not present, he made her describe it twice, then sketched the fix on a scrap of cardboard. At 3, Melissa came after work with iced tea. She paused when she saw the room. It looks different. It's paint, Evelyn said. No, it looks like a room somebody might use. Walter's yellow medication pad lay beneath the plastic on his desk. Evelyn could see one corner of it. She went outside to rinse her brush. Melissa followed. Did I say something wrong? No. You left fast. I was holding wet paint. At the outdoor spigot, Evelyn turned the water too hard. It struck the brush and sprayed both of them. Melissa looked down at the drops across her blouse. Evelyn began to laugh. I have to go back to work, Melissa said, but she was laughing too. You came from work. I could go back. You'd have to explain the beige. Quiet linen, Evelyn corrected. They sprayed each other accidentally twice more, then deliberately once. That night, exhausted and smelling of paint, Evelyn opened the real estate listings Caroline had emailed. She rejected condominiums with monthly fees larger than her first mortgage payment. She rejected an apartment whose kitchen contained 1 drawer. She lingered over the row of duplexes she had passed near Lorna's. One listing was still active. The exterior was pale gray with white trim. The front garden held 2 clipped shrubs and an empty patch large enough for herbs. Inside were 2 bedrooms, one on the main floor and a second under the eaves. The kitchen was narrow but had a breakfast window. The garage held a bare wall beneath a fluorescent light. Room for table, Evelyn thought. She closed the laptop. Then she opened it again and requested a showing. Lorna met her there the next afternoon, 5 minutes early and carrying a tape measure. You're not Diane, Evelyn said. I'm worse. I don't love you enough to pretend your sofa fits. The duplex looked smaller in person. The living room had an awkward corner where the stairs rose. The bathroom tile was the color of a bandage. A train horn sounded in the distance while they stood in the kitchen. "I hate that tile," Evelyn said. "It's very healing. The upstairs room is useless if my shoulder gets worse. Guest room. I don't expect guests." "Then why did you put it on the list?" Evelyn measured the dining area. The table would fit if she removed its extension leaf. The thought hurt less than expected. In the garage, she ran one hand along the bare wall. Walter's red tool chest could sit beneath it. Not every machine, not every saw. The chest. Lorna watched her. "You don't have to buy the first possibility." "I know. You don't have to like it because it's near me. I don't." "Good. I find neediness exhausting." They stepped into the small back garden. 2 streets away, barely visible beyond the roofs, rose the maple trees near Lorna's row. The price was $279,000, reasonable after Evelyn sold, impossible before. The listing agent explained that the seller wanted a quick closing and would not accept an offer dependent on Evelyn's house selling first. Evelyn thanked her and walked back to the car. "It'll be gone," she told Lorna. "Probably." "I shouldn't have looked. Why?" "Because now I can picture it. That's the point of looking. It's also the danger." Lorna leaned against Evelyn's car. "There will be other places. You can't know that. There are always other places. They're just rarely the same place." Evelyn looked back at the gray duplex. For a few minutes she had imagined coffee in the narrow kitchen, the blue bowl on the second shelf, Walter's tool chest beneath the garage light. The image did not feel like betrayal. It felt like movement. When she got home, she called Caroline. "Finish the photographs," Evelyn said. "I want the house listed as soon as the den is cleared." Caroline asked whether she had found somewhere to go. "No." "Then we'll need a plan if you sell quickly." "I have one." "What is it?" "I'll call somebody." Caroline laughed. "Develop a second answer." Evelyn looked at Melissa's key hanging on its new hook beside the refrigerator. "I have," she said. "I'm working on the third." The third answer turned out to be a furnished apartment above a retired dentist's garage, available month to month and close enough to the house that Evelyn could return for whatever she inevitably forgot. Caroline found it through a former client. Evelyn toured it with Melissa and disliked the sloped bedroom ceiling, the humming refrigerator, and the frame print of a sailboat bolted to the living room wall. "It's temporary," Melissa said. "That sailboat looks permanent. You could put something over it." "What? A larger boat?" The landlord wanted a deposit equal to 1 month's rent and would hold the apartment for only 10 days. Evelyn did not take it. Knowing it existed was enough. She and Melissa finished the den on a Thursday night. They shredded old customer records until the machine overheated, then sat on the floor, waiting for it to recover. Walter's medication pad went into a box Evelyn labeled "Keep" without explaining why. His desk stayed for the listing photographs, but its drawers were empty for the first time since they bought it. At the very back of the bottom drawer, Evelyn found 3 peppermints fused to their wrappers, a carpenter's pencil sharpened with a knife, and a paper clip bent into the shape of a fish. Melissa held up the fish. "Dad made this." "How can you tell? It's useless and took effort." Evelyn laughed, then put it in the keep box. The guest room furniture sold to a woman furnishing a short-term rental. The brass bed went first, followed by 2 oak nightstands and a dresser whose bottom drawer had stuck since 2004. Evelyn used the money to replace what she had taken from savings for the porch. When she listed the dining room hutch, Melissa objected. "That was Grandma's." "No, it wasn't." "It wasn't? We bought it from a hotel liquidation in Dayton. I thought it was Grandma's. You never asked." Melissa opened the lower cabinet. Inside were serving platters, cloth napkins, and a silver warming tray nobody had used in 20 years. "It feels like a family thing. Do you want it? My apartment doesn't have room." "Diane? Her dining room already has built-ins." "Scott? Scott would put power tools in it. Then it has achieved family status without a family address." Melissa frowned at the hutch. "How much?" $300. That seems low." "Would you pay $300? "No." "Then it's ambitious." A retired couple bought it for $275 and arrived in a minivan with a blanket, rope, and a level of preparation that earned Evelyn's respect. After they carried it away, the wall behind it showed a pale rectangle and 1 dead spider. Melissa stood in the empty space. "It's strange. That's becoming the house's main feature." "You're keeping the table?" "Yes." Good. Evelyn did not ask whether Melissa had room for that. Caroline's photographer came at 10 on Monday. She opened curtains, shifted lamps, and asked Evelyn to remove the tissue box from her nightstand. People know I use tissues, Evelyn said. They prefer to imagine houses without bodies in them. That explains a great deal about real estate. The woman smiled without lowering her camera. Evelyn carried the tissue box into the hall. Walter's half of the bedroom closet was now empty except for the green tie from Melissa's wedding, which hung alone on the rod. The photographer did not open closets, but Evelyn closed the door anyway. For 90 minutes, her home became a series of angles. The camera faced the dining table from the kitchen, the porch from the walk, the den from the corner where the filing cabinets had stood. Rooms Evelyn had considered crowded looked generous. Rooms she had considered warm looked nearly anonymous. The blue bowl remained in the kitchen cabinet. Before leaving for Lorna's, Evelyn checked. Caroline activated the listing at 4 that afternoon. At 4:11, Diane posted the link in Mom House. The hallway looks much better. Scott replied, still think 439 is low. Melissa wrote, the dining room is beautiful. Evelyn muted the conversation. The first showing request came before dinner. The second came while she was brushing her teeth. By Wednesday, Caroline had scheduled 5 groups, which meant Evelyn spent the day removing herself from her own house in 90-minute intervals. She drove to the library where she read the same page of a mystery novel 4 times. She sat in a coffee shop until a young man with a laptop began glancing at her table as if her empty cup represented an expired lease. During one showing, she parked down the street and watched strangers enter through her front door behind Caroline. A man stepped onto the porch and pressed the repaired corner with his thumb. Try pulling the chimney off, Evelyn muttered. That's sturdy too. She had expected selling to feel like offering the house. Instead, it felt like being repeatedly asked to disappear while people judged what remained. The feedback arrived through Caroline. Kitchen dated, primary bedroom good size, concerned about roof age, beautiful table, too much road noise. No road noise mentioned by next party. Strong possibility if seller replaces counters. Would offer if basement finished. Love mature trees. Worried about mature trees. Buyers want old neighborhoods with young trees, Caroline said. Large kitchens and small houses. Character without maintenance. Do they want me to chew their food? That's an upgraded service. Evelyn declined to replace the counters. She also canceled Sunday dinner. The house needed to remain ready for an afternoon showing, and she was tired of planning a meal around people who had not offered to plan one around her. Diane wrote, "We can do my house." Scott responded that he was working. Melissa had a late shift. Diane said they could move it to Monday, then remembered a staff meeting. The conversation faded without anyone choosing another day. At 5 on Sunday, Evelyn stood in her spotless kitchen and realized there would be no dinner. For years, Sunday had appeared on the calendar as though the gathering belonged to the day itself. In truth, it existed because Evelyn called on Thursday, adjusted the time twice, bought the groceries, remembered which foods each person currently distrusted, and sent everyone home with leftovers. She ate scrambled eggs over the sink. At 6, Lorna called and asked whether she had eaten. Yes? What? Food. That's not a food. Eggs. Come over. Gus made chili and misunderstood serving sizes. Evelyn took a bottle of wine and walked into Lorna's duplex at 7. Noreen was arguing that cinnamon had no place in chili. Gus claimed history was on his side. Nobody asked why Evelyn had arrived late. At 8:15, her phone buzzed with a message from Diane. "Did dinner happen?" Evelyn typed. "Not here." Diane replied, "Oh." The 2 letters carried more disappointment than Evelyn expected. She put the phone away and accepted a second bowl of questionable chili. The first offer arrived Tuesday. $405,000, with a request that Evelyn pay part of the buyer's closing costs and replace the roof before settlement. "No," she told Caroline. "We could counter. Can we counter with a recommendation that they buy a different house? That's what no accomplishes." A second offer came the next day at $425,000. The buyers, Beth and Alan Green, were a married couple in their 50s moving from a condominium because Alan wanted a garage and Beth wanted a room where she could close a door on her accounting work. Their offer depended on inspection and financing, but asked for no immediate repairs. "They noticed the table," Caroline said. "Everyone notices the table. They asked whether you'd sell it." "No, I told them. Evelyn read the offer twice. 30-day closing. Standard inspection period. A price lower than the listing, but higher than the cautious number she had written at the dining table. If I accept, where do I go? She asked. The apartment above the dentist's garage is still available. Or you negotiate extra time here. The sailboat. You can survive the sailboat. That sounds like an opinion outside your license. Caroline sat across from her. You don't have to accept. But this is a reasonable offer. Reasonable felt more frightening than low. Low could be rejected. Insulting could be dismissed. Reasonable required Evelyn to choose. She asked for until morning. Diane arrived at 7 without calling. She knocked. The knock mattered. Evelyn opened the door. I heard you have an offer, Diane said. Caroline called you? Melissa did. Of course. I told her not to? Then she did. Diane carried a paper bag from the bakery Evelyn liked. She held it out as though approaching an animal that might startle. I brought bear claws. Are they attached to advice? Not unless you ask. Evelyn let her in. They sat at the dining table with coffee. The offer lay between them, face down. Diane did not turn it over. How are you? She asked. Don't use your office voice. I don't know which voice is permitted. Your own would be interesting. Diane tore one corner from her pastry. I hate the listing pictures. I thought you liked the hallway. I do. I hate that the house looks like a place I used to live. You moved out 26 years ago. I know. For the first time, Evelyn saw that the sale did not merely threaten Diane's control. It closed a door Diane had assumed would remain available, a place where she could enter and become someone's daughter, instead of the woman who knew what everyone else should do. You can still come here, Evelyn said, for 30 days, maybe longer if I refuse the offer. Are you going to? I don't know. Diane looked around the room. When I saw the trucks leave, I thought you were being stubborn because Scott embarrassed you. All three of you embarrassed me. I know. It was not an apology. It was closer than they had been. Diane touched the edge of the overturned offer. Do you want my opinion? No? All right. You may ask me one question. Diane considered. If Dad had never lived here, would you still want the house? Evelyn looked toward Walter's chair at the head of the table. Caroline had suggested removing it for the photographs. Evelyn had refused. No, she said. The answer settled into the room with less violence than she expected. Diane nodded. Her eyes shone, but she kept her voice steady. Then, I have no second question. After she left, Evelyn carried the offer upstairs. She placed it on the dresser beside Walter's photograph and slept badly. In the morning, sunlight crossed the bed and reached the empty half of the closet. The green tie hung in the brightness. Evelyn called Caroline before she could invent a new reason to wait. Accept it, she said. That afternoon, a small pending rider appeared beneath the sign in the front yard. Evelyn stood on the porch and watched it swing in the wind. For once, the house seemed to be moving while she remained still. The pending rider lasted 3 days. On the 4th, a home inspector arrived carrying 2 canvas bags, a folding ladder, and a camera that made every surface appear guilty. Beth and Alan came with him. Evelyn had agreed to be absent, but Caroline asked her to stop by at the end in case the inspector had questions. She arrived to find 6 pairs of disposable shoe covers lined beside the front door. The sight annoyed her. Walter had tracked half of Ohio across those floors without removing his boots, and now strangers were protecting them from themselves. Beth stood in the laundry room with her arms folded. Alan was beside the washer, staring at the inspector's small screen. Caroline met Evelyn in the kitchen. There's moisture in the west wall, she said. I know the wall needs work. How much work? Noah said it depended on what was behind it. The inspector came through the doorway. He was a square, serious man who seemed uncomfortable delivering news in any tone except weather warning. The thermal imaging shows an active cool area from the washer connection to the floor, he said. My moisture meter is reading high at the baseboard and about 18 inches up. Is the washer leaking? Not visibly. Could be the supply box behind the drywall, could be the drain connection, could be exterior intrusion. I can't determine without opening the wall, Alan said. And the staining in the basement? What staining? Evelyn asked. The inspector led them downstairs. Behind a metal storage shelf, low on the block wall, a pale brown bloom spread beneath the laundry room. Evelyn had never moved the shelf. It held paint cans, jars of screws, and a broken lamp Walter intended to rewire. She touched the stain as if her fingers could determine its age. "Surface is dry here," the inspector said. "That doesn't tell us what's happening above." Beth stayed on the bottom step. Could there be mold? There could be microbial growth in any wet wall cavity. "Microbial growth," Evelyn said. "That sounds like mold with a college degree." Nobody laughed except Caroline, and she stopped quickly. Alan rubbed the back of his neck. "We sold our condo because the building had water problems." Beth looked at him. A conversation passed between them without sound. Evelyn recognized it. Marriage had its own private language, usually most fluent in front of strangers. The inspector found other things. One outlet lacked a ground. The attic insulation had settled. The garage door did not reverse quickly enough when tested. The main roof had limited remaining service life, which meant nothing more specific than old, but the laundry room wall followed them through every room. Beth asked whether Evelyn had known about it. "I knew the wall showed damage," Evelyn said. "I did not know it was wet." "Did you have anyone inspect it?" "My carpenter looked at the surface. Noah had told her the repair could cost more if the studs had rotted. He had also been occupied with the porch, and Evelyn had chosen the repair she could see dripping." Beth nodded, but the nod was not agreement. It was a door closing politely. The Greens terminated the contract the next afternoon. Caroline called at 2:12. "They're within the inspection period. They don't need to negotiate, so they won't even ask for a credit? No. Water is their fear. If the report had said the roof was made of crackers, we might have kept them." Evelyn sat at Walter's desk. The den smelled faintly of quiet linen. "What happens now?" "We remove pending and return the listing to active. People will see it went back." "Yes. They'll think something is wrong. Something is wrong." Caroline did not soften facts into insults. Usually Evelyn appreciated that. "We disclosed the moisture finding," Caroline continued. "I recommend you open the wall, identify the source, repair it, and document what was done. Otherwise, every buyer will price the worst possibility." "How much?" "I'm not the one to ask." Noah was working across town and could not come until morning. Scott did not answer his phone. Evelyn called a plumber whose magnet had been on her refrigerator since the upstairs toilet clogged during Christmas 8 years earlier. He said he could look Monday. It was Thursday. 4 days became an insult. Evelyn went into the laundry room and pulled the washer away from the wall. The vinyl floor beneath it was gray with dust, except for one dark track leading from the supply box toward the baseboard. She pressed the wall. The drywall gave slightly beneath her thumb. Oh, Walter. She could not blame him. That made her angrier. The wallpaper was a yellow trellis pattern they had hung in 1996. Walter had wanted plain paint. Evelyn had insisted the room deserved cheer because she spent so much time there. Now the little yellow vines crossed a wet wall with obscene optimism. She found a putty knife in the garage and began at a loose seam. The first strip came away easily. The second tore into damp paper. She pulled harder, using her right arm above shoulder height. Pain flashed from the top of her shoulder to her elbow. Evelyn dropped the knife. For several seconds she stood completely still, breathing through her teeth. Then she reached again because pain had never finished a room. The next pull was worse. By the time Lorna knocked at the back door, Evelyn had removed 6 square feet of wallpaper and could no longer raise her right hand to turn the knob. "Doors open," she called. Lorna stepped inside carrying a grocery sack. She took in the shifted washer, the torn wallpaper, and Evelyn's arm held tightly against her body. "What did you do?" "Improve the room." "You look like you're going to be sick." "I'm fine." "Fine is not a medical condition. It should be. I've had it for years." Lorna set down the sack. "Can you move your fingers?" Evelyn did. "Any numbness?" "No." "Did you fall?" "No." "Chest pain?" "Lorna. I watch television. It's my shoulder. I pulled something." Lorna touched the sleeve of her sweater, not the shoulder itself. "Sit down. I have to open the wall. You have to sit down before I sit you down, and then we both need medical attention." Evelyn sat at the kitchen table. Lorna wrapped ice in a dish towel and placed it over her shoulder. The weight hurt. The cold helped. "How did you know?" Evelyn asked. Melissa called. "Melissa knows about the contract," Caroline told her. "Why is my real estate agent running a news service? You listed Melissa as your emergency contact." "This isn't an emergency." Lorna looked at her arm. "Your definitions need work." The grocery sack contained chicken soup, crackers, and a package of chocolate cookies. Evelyn objected to the soup on the grounds that she was injured, not infectious. Lorna heated it anyway. Noah arrived before 5, still wearing his work belt. I said morning, he told Evelyn. So did I. You also told Lorna you were opening the wall yourself. I was removing wallpaper with a putty knife. That is the customary relationship. He examined the damaged area, shut off the washer valves, and removed a small square of drywall below the supply box. The inside edge was dark. When he pressed the insulation, water shone against his glove. Slow leak at the cold water connection, he said. Probably only leaks when the washer runs. Can you fix it? I'm not a plumber. You have fixed every pipe you've ever encountered. And Walter yelled at me for doing it. He's unavailable. Noah enlarged the opening. A sour, damp smell entered the room. The base of one stud was blackened. Another remained pale. How bad? Lorna asked. Not catastrophic. Not cheap. Plumber replaces the box in line. We open enough wall to dry it, remove anything soft, treat the framing, rebuild. Flooring may need a section. How much? Evelyn asked. Useful number? 5 to 7,000, assuming it stops where I think. She laughed once. Lorna set a cookie in front of her. What? Noah said. Every problem has a promotion. He leaned against the washer. I can write an estimate tonight. Scott can do it for less. Noah's face closed slightly. Maybe. I didn't say I would ask him. The back door opened. Scott stood there with the blue-capped key in one hand. All three of them looked at him. He held up the key. Melissa gave it to me. She said, Mom hurt her shoulder. Evelyn looked at Lorna. My security system has become a lending library. I'll change the locks myself this time, Lorna said. Scott stepped into the laundry room and crouched beside the opening. His clothes smelled of cut wood and sweat. He pushed one finger against the damaged stud, checked the washer box, then looked up at Noah. Line or fitting? Fitting, I think. Wall's been wet a while. I noticed. Scott ignored the tone. You opened the basement ceiling? Not yet. We should. We? Evelyn said. Scott stood. You need this fixed. I'm aware. I can have a plumber here tomorrow morning. Why didn't you answer your phone? I was on a job. You tried to sell my tools because work was slow. It picked up. Since last week? Do you want help or an audit? Lorna slid the plate of cookies toward Evelyn. I recommend the audit. It comes with refreshments. Scott noticed the ice pack. His anger changed shape. How bad is your arm? Strained. You see a doctor? She's going, Lorna said. Evelyn glared at her. Tomorrow morning, Lorna added. Scott turned to Noah. What did you quote? Nothing in writing yet. I can do labor at cost. I'm paying whoever does the work, Evelyn said. Why? Because free work becomes a story people tell later. Scott looked down at the open wall. Not everything is a transaction? No. Some things are attempted transactions. The remark hit its target. She regretted it immediately, but did not take it back. Scott walked into the kitchen, placed the blue-capped key on the table, and stared at it. I returned the stapler and laser. I cleaned them. I saw that too. He nodded, still looking at the key. I shouldn't have offered the machines. No. I was going to replace them when things improved. With what? New equipment. Then why not wait and buy new equipment for yourself? His mouth tightened. Because the bank doesn't care what Dad intended. There it was again, the machinery beneath his pride. 7 trucks, insurance, payroll, payments arriving whether customers did or not. The same trap Walter had built from good intentions and bad arithmetic. Evelyn said, Are you in trouble? I'm handling it. That was your father's answer. Scott looked toward the laundry room, where Noah stood in the opening Walter's house had concealed. I know, he said. The admission was so quiet that Evelyn almost missed it. He picked up the key and carried it to Melissa's hook beside the refrigerator. I'll send my plumber's number, he said. Use him or don't. Noah's estimate will be fair. Noah's eyebrows rose. Scott left without asking for the garage tools. Lorna drove Evelyn to urgent care the next morning. The diagnosis was a strained rotator cuff, aggravated rather than torn. Rest, ice, medication, and no lifting above shoulder height. Evelyn disliked all 4 instructions. When they returned, Noah's estimate waited in her email, $5,850, not including plumbing. Scott's plumber had left a voicemail offering an appointment that afternoon. Evelyn hired both. The pending rider disappeared from the sign while she watched from the kitchen window, her arm in a sling she refused to wear outside. Caroline placed active beneath the listing again. For one raw minute, Evelyn wanted to cancel everything. Keep the house. Keep the wall open. Keep Walter's chair and his machines and every expense until there was nothing left to choose. Then Lorna set a fresh cup of coffee beside her. "Don't decide from pain," she said. Evelyn looked at the torn yellow wallpaper, the exposed stud, the sign beyond the window. "I'm not," she said. "I decided before it hurt." The plumber arrived in a white truck with Scott Mercer Contracting printed on both doors. Evelyn stood at the window with her coffee and considered refusing to let him in on typographical grounds. The man who climbed out was in his 60s and wore a red cap darkened at the brim. He introduced himself as Ray, shook Noah's hand, and accepted Evelyn's instruction that all costs be written down. "Scott already covered the service call," Ray said. "Uncover it." Ray looked at Noah. Noah said, "She means bill her." "I know what she means. I'm deciding how much I enjoy being between them." Scott arrived 20 minutes later, carrying a box of fittings. He did not ask to be let in. He knocked at the back door and waited until Evelyn opened it. "I'm here to drop these off," he said. "You can come inside." He looked at her sling. "How's the shoulder?" "Attached. That's not what I asked. It hurts less when people stop asking." Scott set the fittings on the washer. Ray examined the leaking connection and declared it old, badly threaded, and ordinary. There was comfort in ordinary. No hidden disaster, no dramatic betrayal by the house. Just a metal fitting that had seeped a little water during every wash until wood and drywall could no longer pretend not to notice. Scott stayed to help remove the lower cabinets. Noah arrived with lumber, and for the first hour the two men spoke only through Ray. "Tell him that cut needs another eighth," Scott said. Ray did not look up. "He can hear you. Tell him anyway." Noah measured again. "Tell Scott I own a tape." Evelyn sat at the kitchen table with ice on her shoulder and an invoice pad between them. "Walter would have enjoyed this," she said. Both men answered, "No." That broke something. Not the old grievance, but the performance of it. Scott held the replacement stud while Noah fastened it. Noah admitted Scott's method for lifting the base cabinet was better. Scott found Walter's crooked patch in the basement ceiling and said he really believed joint compound was a personality trait. By late afternoon, the pipe was repaired, the damaged framing removed, and 2 fans blew into the open wall. Ray handed Evelyn an invoice for $480. "Scott gets volume pricing. You get the same?" "Fair." Scott watched her write the check. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I did." "Why?" "Because then your help remains help." He considered this as though it might be a trick. Before leaving, he stepped into the garage. Evelyn followed but stayed by the door. "I'm not taking anything," he said. "I didn't accuse you. You followed me. I live here." He walked to the planer and rested one hand on its green metal housing. The yellow tape was gone, but a clean rectangle marked where it had been. "I really did think Dad meant these for me." "I believe you." Scott looked back. "You do?" "I believe he said it. I also believe he said things because he liked being generous in the future." A reluctant smile moved across Scott's mouth. "He promised me his truck 6 years before he stopped driving it. He promised Diane the china, then promised it to Melissa when Diane bought white dishes." "What did he promise you?" Evelyn glanced toward the house. "That we'd take a train across Canada." "Did you?" "No." Scott's hand dropped from the planer. "I'm selling the large machines," she said. "I need the garage cleared, and I need the money for the repairs. If you want any, Noah will price them fairly. You can have first chance." "First chance to buy what Dad already—" He stopped. Evelyn waited. Scott rubbed the clean spot left by the tape. "Send me the prices. I will." It was not peace. It was a conversation that did not end with either of them leaving something in a driveway. The laundry room repair took 9 days because the framing had to dry. Evelyn hated the fans. Their constant roar made the first floor feel like an airport, and they blew lint from places she did not know lint could hide. Unable to paint or lift, she was forced to receive help in forms she had not designed. Lorna changed the sheets because Evelyn could not wrestle the fitted corners. Melissa washed dishes and put the gravy boat in the wrong cabinet again. Gus carried boxes from the den to the garage, labeling each one in handwriting so elegant that Evelyn accused him of wasting it on cardboard. Diane came with groceries and did not reorganize the refrigerator. You left the milk on the wrong shelf, Evelyn said. Diane froze. That was a joke. I can't tell anymore. Neither can I. Put it wherever you want. Diane placed the milk on the middle shelf, then moved it to the top, perhaps out of principle. When the wall was closed and painted, Caroline brought back the photographer. The laundry room looked offensively innocent. New white wall, new baseboard, old yellow wallpaper remaining on the other three sides. You could remove the rest, Caroline said. No, it might look unfinished. It is finished. It simply has a history. Caroline photographed it from the doorway. The listing returned at the same price, along with copies of the plumber's invoice, Noah's repair description, and moisture readings showing the framing was dry. Buyers came more slowly now. Some saw that the house had returned to market and assumed the basement was sinking. Others appreciated that the water problem had been identified, rather than merely painted over. One woman spent 40 minutes measuring kitchen cabinets, then offered $390,000 because she planned to replace all of them. Evelyn declined. A man with 2 classic cars loved the garage, but wanted the entire tool collection included. Evelyn declined him too. You're becoming very skilled at no, Caroline said. I've had recent practice. The second reasonable offer arrived 11 days after the wall closed. $428,000 from Paul and Renee Dawson, both in their early 60s. They had sold a larger house after deciding they were tired of cleaning rooms they did not enter. Renee wanted the mature trees. Paul had run a hardware store for 30 years and understood that a 22-year-old roof was old rather than treacherous. They requested an inspection, but they had read the previous report and the repair documentation first. The new inspector found the same ungrounded outlet, settled insulation, aging roof, and slow garage door reversal. He measured the laundry wall twice, dry. The Dawsons asked Evelyn to repair the garage door sensor and accepted everything else. This time, Evelyn did not celebrate when Caroline changed the sign. She waited through the inspection period and the financing review. She waited until Caroline called and said the conditions were satisfied. Then she sat in Walter's chair at the head of the dining table. Your house sold, she told him. The words sounded cruel in the quiet room. She tried again. I sold our house. That was worse. She covered her face with her left hand and cried until the doorbell rang. It was Diane, holding a printout from a real estate site. I waited outside for 5 minutes, she said. I wasn't sure if arriving immediately after news counted as management. It does. I can leave. What is that? A duplex, 2 streets from Lorna. It listed this morning. Evelyn lowered her hand. You're sending me listings again? I was going to ask whether you want to see it. That is not the same. I know. Diane held the paper loosely, allowing Evelyn to take it or not. The duplex was cream-colored with dark green shutters. One half was occupied. The other had a small covered porch, 2 bedrooms on the main floor, a narrow garden, and an attached garage. It cost $11,000 less than the gray one Evelyn had missed. When can we see it? She asked. Diane's expression brightened, then carefully did not become triumphant. Caroline arranged 4:30, if you want. Caroline represents houses now? She called the listing agent. Efficient? I can cancel. No, we'll go. The duplex smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and someone else's furniture. Its owner had already moved to Arizona, leaving rooms empty except for a kitchen stool and a rolled carpet pad in the garage. The living room was smaller than Evelyn's, but the dining table would fit near the front window. The kitchen counters were laminate, pale gray with darker speckles. Evelyn touched them and thought of all the buyers who had wanted hers replaced. The main bedroom overlooked the garden. The second bedroom had one wall of shelves and a door that closed. Guest room, Diane said, or sewing room. You don't sew. I may begin. I support your late life fabric journey. They opened closets, tested faucets, and stood in the garage beneath a bright fluorescent fixture. There was room for Walter's red tool chest, a workbench, and little else. Diane pointed to the 2 concrete steps leading into the kitchen. That could become an issue later. A railing would help. Yes. No declaration that Evelyn could not manage it. Just a problem and a possible answer. The adjacent owner, a woman named Frances Bell, stepped outside while they viewed the garden. She was 76, wore rubber clogs, and asked whether Evelyn disliked wind chimes. I haven't decided, Evelyn said. I have 7. I dislike them. Frances nodded. Honesty. Good. Mine are in the back. After she went inside, Diane looked at Evelyn. Well, don't ask that until we're in the car. They sat with the windows closed even though the afternoon was warm. Diane placed both hands in her lap. Do you want my opinion? Yes. It's not as pretty as your house. The bathroom needs a grab bar eventually, and the association documents should be reviewed. But the rooms make sense. The costs make sense. It feels like a place you would live, not a place we would put you. Evelyn looked at her daughter. Diane swallowed. I hear it now. The way you said things, the way I thought them. Evelyn reached across the console and took her hand. They stayed that way only a moment. Diane had never been comfortable with prolonged tenderness. She squeezed once, then released. Evelyn made an offer that evening, contingent only on the successful closing of her house. The seller countered $2,000 higher. Evelyn accepted. After the calls ended, she opened her notebook and subtracted again. Sale price, loan, commission, closing expenses, repairs, duplex, moving, a rail for the garage steps. Enough remained for emergencies, ordinary pleasures, and the care she might one day need. Not enough to become careless, enough to stop being afraid of every repair. She wrote the final estimated balance and circled it. Then she turned to the list she had made after visiting Lorna. 1 floor, room for table, small garden, garage, guest room, close enough for coffee, enough money left to live. I choose who has a key. Beside each line, Evelyn made a check. The final one she left blank. Some choices, she had learned, were worth making slowly. The sale and purchase refused to line up neatly. Paul and Renee needed Evelyn's house by the end of the month because the people buying their condominium had already scheduled movers. The owner of the duplex would not close until 18 days later, while the last terms of her own move were settled. Caroline suggested negotiating, then saw Evelyn looking at the calendar. The sailboat apartment, she said. Evelyn closed her eyes. It's still available. Of course it is. Nobody wants to live beneath that ceiling. You need 18 days. I could stay with Lorna. You could. I could stay with Diane. Caroline waited. The apartment has a kitchenette and a garage bay for storage. Call the dentist. The landlord's name was Dr. Morley, though he had not practiced dentistry in 9 years and still introduced himself with the title. He agreed to 17 days if Evelyn paid the cleaning fee. He also agreed she could place a freestanding screen in front of the sailboat print, provided she did not touch the frame. What happened to that picture? Evelyn asked. My wife chose it. Is she attached to it? She's dead. I'm sorry. So am I. I never liked boats. Evelyn paid the deposit. Packing began with new labels. She refused every color Diane had brought on moving day. Instead, she wrote the destinations in black marker: duplex, apartment, donate, sell, and decide. Later. Decide later is going to become a large department, Melissa said. Then it can have its own truck. Diane packed the kitchen under supervision she did not request. She wrapped the everyday plates before the formal china, then caught herself and asked which set Evelyn wanted at the apartment. The everyday dishes. How many? 4. There's one of you. I'm planning optimism. Diane placed 4 plates in the apartment box. They worked well together when nobody pretended the work belonged to them. Melissa brought empty cartons from the freight company. Diane made lists but kept them in her purse unless Evelyn asked. Lorna packed books according to a system she described as emotional weight and refused to explain. Gus disconnected the washer. Noah built a wooden cradle around Walter's red tool chest so it would not shift during transport. Scott did not come. He responded to practical messages with short answers. Yes, he could recommend a mover. No, he did not want the spare compressor. Send the machine prices. Busy today. Noah valued the planer at $1,400, the lathe at $16, and the drill press at $600. The numbers were fair and lower than what patient individual sales might bring. Evelyn sent them to Scott first. He called that night. You're selling the planer for $14. If you want it, it's worth more. Then it's a bargain. I don't have $1,400 to put into equipment right now. You tried to sell it for $2,200 with the lathe. I was raising cash. I know. Give me 6 months. I'll be in the duplex in 3 weeks. There isn't room. Store them in my shop. Until you can buy them? Until we figure it out. Evelyn sat on the bedroom floor amid boxes of Walter's clothes. The green tie lay across the bed. She had donated his shirts, his suits, and the winter coat he wore every day from November to March. The tie remained. "We are figuring it out," she said. "That's what you don't like." Scott was silent. "Are you asking me to give you the machines?" she asked. "Dad wanted me to have them. Are you asking me?" The effort it cost him came through the phone. "Yes." Evelyn closed her eyes. "No." He laughed once, sharply. "At least that's clear. I need the money. I paid more than $7,000 for repairs, not counting the porch, painting, and furnace service. You're walking away with plenty." There it was, the house money, already converted in his mind from Evelyn's home into a family account. "I am buying another house, for 260-something. I know what yours sold for. Then subtract the loan, the sale costs, the repairs, and the new house. You'll still have money." "Yes." "How much?" "That is not your business. I'm not asking for an inheritance." "What are you asking for?" Scott did not answer directly. "I've got a line of credit renewing. 2 commercial clients are 90 days out, and the bank wants me to pay it down before they extend. It's timing. How much?" $12,000 would settle it. Evelyn looked at the boxes around her. $12,000 was close to the amount she had expected to spend repairing the house before the wet wall. It was months of expenses in the duplex. It was dental work, a furnace, a section of roof, the difference between help later and panic later. "You didn't tell me you were this far behind." "I'm not behind. I'm squeezed." "Your father used that word. I'm not Dad." "No." "But you use his explanations." Scott's voice rose. "So you'll sell his equipment to strangers and sit on money while my business gets crushed? I will use my money to live. You have a pension. I have Social Security and a small survivor benefit. You know what I mean." "Yes," Evelyn said. "I do." The anger left him. What remained was worse. "I thought you'd help me. I have helped you. I kept your books your first year. I covered your insurance when that customer sued over the warped floor. I wrote you a check for the second truck. I paid that back. Most of it. This is different. It is always different when you need it now." He went quiet. Evelyn pressed her palm against the carpet. "Bring me your business records. All of them. Let me see the receivables, payments, payroll, loans, and what you're paying yourself. If $12,000 solves a timing problem, I'll consider a formal loan. No. Then no. I'm not opening my books so you and Noah can decide whether I'm responsible enough. Noah would not see them. Diane would. No, you'd tell Melissa, Scott, forget it." He hung up. The planer and lathe sold together to 2 brothers who built custom cabinets in a rented shop outside Newark. They paid $2,800 and brought their own trailer. Scott did not come to watch. Evelyn stood in the garage as the machines rolled away. The planer's wheels rattled over the seam in the concrete. The lathe required 4 men and language Evelyn pretended not to hear. When the trailer left, the garage looked enormous. Walter's red tool chest remained beneath the pegboard. So did the workbench, a smaller drill, hand tools, the radio, and the measuring tape, with his name scratched into the case. "You keep enough to start a small country," Noah said. "I'm downsizing, not surrendering." He swept sawdust and old leaves from the empty space. "You did right on the machines. Scott doesn't think so. Scott thinks his father is inside them." Evelyn looked at Noah. He leaned on the broom. "I thought that too. For a while. Every time I used something Walter taught me, I'd get angry all over again. Then one day, I made a mistake entirely my own and realized I'd become free. That's a terrible comfort. It's the kind I offer." The day before the closing, Paul and Renee walked through the house with Caroline. Evelyn stayed this time. The rooms were mostly empty, and the echo made every conversation sound official. Renee checked the laundry wall. Paul tested the garage door sensor twice. Both worked. "We love the table," Renee said in the dining room. "It's coming with me." "I know. I had to try once more." Paul looked toward Walter's chair. "That too?" "Yes." When they finished, Renee stood on the porch and touched the repaired corner. "You took good care of this place," she said. Evelyn nearly corrected her. She nearly listed the delayed repairs, the leaking fitting, the old roof. Instead, she said, "We lived in it." That evening, her children were supposed to come for one last Sunday dinner, even though it was Tuesday. The date had changed twice because of closing and work schedules. Evelyn ordered takeout because every pan was packed. She had one task left before they arrived. In the den, she opened a small fireproof box and removed a cloth-bound ledger. The cover had once been red, but had faded to brown along the edges. She began it the year Diane was born, when Mercer Flooring was still Walter, one helper, and a rented truck. House payment, $196. Groceries, $31.40. Walter draw, $85. Evelyn bookkeeping, $0. Year after year, the figures changed. Mortgage payments rose, then disappeared. Grocery bills multiplied. Business income grew, then narrowed. Beside Walter's jobs, Evelyn had written the hours she spent invoicing, balancing accounts, preparing payroll, and calling customers who promised the check was in the mail. She had never totaled her own hours. The zero was understood. Diane would understand the ledger's language. Not immediately, perhaps, but eventually. Evelyn wrapped it in brown paper and wrote her name. For Scott, she chose Walter's measuring tape. It was not valuable. The yellow casing was scratched and the metal tape jammed if extended past 20 feet. Walter had carried it until the numbers near the first inch wore pale. She wrapped it without cleaning it. The blue bowl sat on the kitchen counter. Evelyn ran a finger over the chipped rim. Walter had bought it at a roadside market during their first trip, after the flooring business began to make enough money for 2 nights away. They had driven to Kentucky with no reservation and argued for an hour over a map because Walter refused to admit he had missed the turn. At the market, he bought the bowl because Evelyn said nobody needed a bowl that small. For years, she used it for salt, buttons, loose screws, lemon wedges, and once a goldfish that belonged to a neighbor recovering from surgery. It had survived because it was useful in ways nobody planned. Melissa would understand that too. Evelyn wrapped the bowl in newspaper, then changed her mind and used a clean dish towel. The doorbell rang at 6. Diane stood outside holding a bag of ice and 3 bottles of soda. Melissa carried 2 sacks from the Chinese restaurant against her chest. "Scott here?" Diane asked. "Not yet." "He said he was coming." Melissa looked past Evelyn into the empty foyer. "It sounds different. Everything does without furniture." They set food on the dining table. Evelyn had kept 4 plates, 4 forks, 4 glasses, and Walter's chair. She had not planned the number. There simply had never been 5 of them after he died, no matter how many chairs remained. At 6:20, the food began to cool. Diane checked her phone. "He hasn't answered." "Don't call again," Evelyn said. "He said he was coming. I heard you." At 6:28, headlights crossed the bare dining room wall. A truck door closed outside. Scott entered without knocking, then stopped in the foyer as if remembering. He backed onto the porch, pulled the door shut, and rang the bell. Evelyn opened it. He stood with Walter's radio beneath one arm. "I thought the garage shouldn't be empty tonight," he said. Evelyn stepped aside and let him carry it in. Scott set the radio on the floor beside Walter's chair. "Still works," he said. "I know. You plugged it in?" "Country station." His mouth lifted. Dad would hate that. He survived worse. Scott looked around the dining room. Without the hutch, curtains, or pictures, there was nowhere for his attention to rest. He shoved his hands into his jacket pockets. "I'm sorry I'm late," Diane said. "Your food's cold. That happens when food waits. That happens when people are rude." Evelyn touched Diane's arm. "Sit." They took their old places. Diane to Evelyn's right, Scott on the left, Melissa across from him. Walter's chair remained at the head. Evelyn sat beside it rather than in it. The takeout containers crowded the center of the table. Sweet and sour chicken, beef with broccoli, fried rice, dumplings already losing their crispness. Melissa had remembered extra mustard. Diane had brought the wrong soda and appeared prepared to defend it. For a few minutes, they did nothing but pass food. Scott ate quickly. Diane picked peas from the rice. Melissa kept glancing toward the bare wall where the family photographs had hung. "Where are the pictures?" she asked. "Packed for the duplex. All of them?" "Most." "I threw out the one from the beach where the wind blew my dress over my head." "That was the best one," Scott said. "You were laughing. Dad was laughing. Your father had seen my underwear before." Diane closed her eyes. "Can we not?" "Apparently we cannot," Melissa said. Their laughter sounded too loud in the empty room. It rose into the ceiling and returned softened. Evelyn ate half a dumpling. She had imagined this dinner many ways. In some versions, she gave a speech so devastating her children could only sit in shame. In others, Scott apologized perfectly. Diane cried without arguing, and Melissa understood everything before Evelyn had to say it. Real life had produced cold beef, a radio on the floor, and 4 people trying not to look at an empty chair. This is the last dinner here, Diane said. It is. What time are the movers coming? 7:15. All three children looked at her. Scott said, You hired movers? Yes. We could do it. I have seen your moving style. That was different. It certainly was. Melissa covered her mouth, but not before Evelyn saw the smile. Diane asked, Which company? Columbus Best Move. You hired the same men? The company had an opening. Mom, I receive a discount because the previous visit was non-productive. Scott leaned back and laughed, not politely. His whole face opened, and for a moment, Walter was there in the angle of his head. Diane tried not to join him. She failed. When the laughter settled, Evelyn reached beneath her chair and brought out the 3 wrapped packages. I have something for each of you. Scott eyed the small parcel in front of her. This isn't where you announce we all get 1 box in 15 minutes, is it? No, you've already demonstrated what you can do with 15 minutes. She handed the flat brown package to Diane. Diane untied the string carefully and unfolded the paper. The ledger rested across her palms. What is this? Open it. She turned the cover. The first pages crackled at the binding. Diane read the entries from the year she was born, then flipped forward. Her finger followed the columns Evelyn had ruled by hand. House payment, groceries, business expenses, she said, and time. Diane found the hour totals beside Evelyn's name. Invoices, payroll, banking, customer calls. $0 repeated in the payment column. I wasn't keeping score, Evelyn said. Not then. Why give it to me? Because you understand what it means to be the person who keeps everything running. You also understand how quickly people stop seeing the work and start seeing it as your personality. Diane stared at the ledger. I have spent years expecting you to notice what needed doing, Evelyn continued. Then I was angry when you decided that meant everything was yours to do. I helped teach you that. Diane's eyes filled. She brushed one thumb over an entry. You worked 40 hours some weeks, some for Dad's business, for hours. And he paid the installers before he paid you. There often wasn't anything left. Diane turned another page. You should keep this. I kept it long enough. This feels like evidence. It is. Not against your father, not against you. It is evidence that care is work, even when nobody writes a check. Diane closed the cover. I don't know whether this is a gift or an assignment. It can be both. That sounds like you? She held the ledger against her chest, awkwardly, as though it had weight beyond paper. Evelyn gave the next parcel to Scott. He unwrapped the measuring tape and went still. The case had once been yellow. Walter's initials were scratched near the belt clip. A line of hardened flooring adhesive ran along one side. That's it? Scott asked. Diane shot him a warning look. No, Evelyn said. There's also beef. Scott did not smile. He pulled the tape out 6 feet, then let it snap back. It jammed with 3 inches showing. He never fixed that, Scott said. He said he knew where 3 inches was. He dropped it off the courthouse stairs. He told me it was a ladder. He wasn't supposed to be using the courthouse stairs. That's why. Scott worked the blade gently until it retracted. His thumb moved over Walter's initials. I thought you might give me the red tool chest. I'm keeping it. What will you do with it? Learn which drawer holds the screwdrivers. That'll take years. I have time. He looked at her then. Evelyn said, I did not give you the most valuable tool. I gave you the one he carried. Scott lowered his eyes to the tape. I know. I also did not give you $12,000. Diane looked sharply from one to the other. Melissa stopped opening a sauce packet. Scott's jaw tightened. We don't have to do this now. We do because there will not be an early division of the house money, not for any of you. Nobody else asked, he said. No. But all 3 of you counted it before the sign went up. Diane flinched. Evelyn kept her voice even. The money will pay for the duplex, the loan, repairs, moving, and whatever care I need later. It may also pay for dinners I don't cook, trips I choose, and things that bring me no practical return. Scott stared at the measuring tape. I offered to look at your books, she said. That offer remains. A check without the books does not. I brought them. Evelyn blinked. They're in my truck, he said. Copies. Not everything. Enough. Why didn't you say? I was late. Diane made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. Scott rubbed the tape case with his thumb. I don't want Noah looking. He won't. And I don't want Diane organizing them. I don't want to organize them, Diane said. You organize condiments in restaurants. They put ketchup with vinegar-based sauces. It's chaos. Evelyn held up one hand. The records stay between Scott and me. We look at them after I move. I promise nothing except honesty. Scott nodded once. That was enough for tonight. Melissa's parcel was last. She unfolded the dish towel and found the blue bowl. For a moment, her face showed only confusion. The red sticker, she said. Yes. I almost threw this away. You classified it. I didn't know. That was the problem. Melissa cradled the bowl in both hands. Why does it matter? Evelyn told them about the roadside market in Kentucky, the missed turn, and Walter buying the bowl because she said nobody needed it. She told them about the screws, lemons, buttons, and the neighbor's goldfish. Scott laughed. A fish lived in that? 6 days. It was ungrateful. What happened? The neighbor recovered. To the fish. It went home. Melissa traced the chipped rim. You used it for everything? For small things that needed somewhere to be. Do you want me to keep it safe? No. Melissa looked up. Use it, Evelyn said. Safety is what nearly put my table in storage. Melissa pressed the bowl against her sweater. I'm sorry, I know. No, I'm sorry we made you feel like something that needed somewhere to be. The room blurred. Evelyn reached for her water glass and found Diane's hand instead. For once, nobody filled the silence. After dinner, they ate directly from the takeout cartons because the 4 plates were already dirty. Diane washed them without asking where they belonged. Scott plugged in the radio. Melissa found a station playing an old song Walter liked, and they sat around the table until nearly midnight. Nobody said they had forgiven anyone. Nobody needed to lie. The brakes sighed outside Evelyn's bedroom window. At 7:12 the next morning, she was already dressed. The truck backed into the driveway, a single vehicle this time. The red-bearded mover stepped out, saw Evelyn on the porch, and stopped. Morning, he said cautiously. Morning. Everything authorized today? By me. He nodded. That makes the paperwork easier. Melissa arrived in work clothes carrying coffee. She held up the blue-capped key. Last use, she said. You asked me to come in if you were upstairs. I remember. The movers loaded boxes marked apartment first, then storage. Evelyn checked each destination against her notebook. The red tool chest required the dolly. Walter's chair went beneath a moving blanket. The radio traveled in Melissa's car because Scott said truck vibrations would damage the tuner. Diane arrived at 8 with breakfast sandwiches and no packing tape. I brought cheese on yours, she told Evelyn. You have learned nothing. I took it off. Then I'll allow it. Scott did not come. By 9, the house held only the dining table, 4 chairs, and the boxes Evelyn planned to take in her car. The movers carried out the chairs. Then they stood at opposite ends of the table. Doors tight, the bearded man said. We may need to remove the legs. They come off, Melissa said. I have experience. Evelyn looked through the open front door. Scott's pickup was parked across the street. He sat behind the wheel for several seconds, then climbed out. He carried no boxes and offered no explanation. I can take one end, he said. The mover stepped aside. Scott gripped the table beneath the same edge he had nearly carried towards storage weeks earlier. Evelyn put her left hand on the other end. Her shoulder no longer needed the sling, but Scott noticed. I've got the weight, he said. So do I. They lifted together. The table cleared the dining room doorway, then caught at the turn into the foyer. Scott backed up. Evelyn shifted her grip. For one breathless second, the table wedged between the wall and the door frame. Your angle's wrong, Scott said. Your end is larger. It is a rectangle. Then explain your difficulty. Melissa laughed from the porch. Scott lowered his end an inch. Evelyn raised hers. The table passed through. Outside, the morning was clear and cool. Mrs. Pritchard stood beside her hydrangea without pretending to trim it. Scott and Evelyn carried the table down the walk. He took more than half the weight. This time, she let him. When the truck doors closed, Evelyn walked through the house alone. The pale rectangle where the hutch had stood. The repaired laundry wall. The den painted quiet linen. The scrape on the dining room floor where Walter tilted his chair. She touched the kitchen counter, then the front door frame. Paul and Renee would replace things. They would complain about the counters and someday replace the roof. The house would accept them as it had accepted every repair, argument, supper, and silence Evelyn's family had placed inside it. She locked the door and gave the keys to Caroline at closing. The apartment above Dr. Morley's garage was exactly as temporary as promised. Evelyn put a folding screen in front of the sailboat and lived from 12 boxes. Lorna came for coffee and hit her head on the bedroom ceiling. Diane knocked before entering even when invited. Melissa used the blue bowl for wrapped candy on her own kitchen counter, then sent Evelyn a photograph as proof of life. Scott brought his business records on the second evening. They worked at the apartment's tiny table for 4 hours. $12,000 would have bought him perhaps 3 months. It would not have fixed customers paying late, trucks leased too quickly, or estimates that assumed every job went right. He did not receive a check. He left with a list of contracts to collect, 1 truck to sell, and his father's measuring tape clipped to his belt. 18 days later, Evelyn opened the mustard-colored front door of her own cream duplex. Noah had already installed a workbench in the garage. The red tool chest fit beneath it. Walter's chair stood at the dining table, no longer at the head, just one place among others. Lorna arrived carrying wine. Gus brought chili without cinnamon. Noreen brought 4 unmatched glasses. Diane brought milk and asked which shelf. Melissa brought nothing because Evelyn had told her not to. Scott came last. He rang the bell. On the hook beside the refrigerator hung Evelyn's key, a spare for Melissa and one for Lorna because she lived 2 streets away. A 4th key rested in the drawer, unassigned. Evelyn opened the door. Scott stood on the porch holding the radio. "Where do you want it?" he asked. She looked past him at the small garden, the low gutters, and the moving truck disappearing at the end of the street. "Come in," she said. "We'll decide."